First to two. 64 teams. I'm assuming this is from the 11th, so it would be, yeah. We have the last group stage coming up on the 18th.
dream just to be. Welcome to the Boise State Esports Arena. You're watching our coverage of ABC Collegiate Overwatch. Boise State continues their season looking strong, but of course, as we get further into the season and closer to the finals, big names like UT Dallas, Northwood, and Maryville University loom ever closer. But tonight, the Broncos are going to be facing off against Rutgers. And to bring you all the action, I'm your host, Jacob Gem Palmer. I am joined by Rich Rad calling all of the action for us right now. And Rich Rad, why don't you tell us a little bit about where the Broncos stand currently and where the Rutgers stand currently as well?
I mean, going into this, there was some mention and talk that they are at a 6-0 scoreline right now, so they have everything to play for to differentiate themselves amongst these teams in this top segment of 64. And as you mentioned, we're just about to go into that round-robin group stage that's going to begin on the later portion, since 18th is the last for this Swiss segment. Can't wait to see how it's going to unfold and see where the placements start to lie.
Well, the Broncos have been on a tear, but one of these teams tonight has to go home with the first L in their bracket, and they're going to be doing that in this best-of-3 ABC match that we have lined up for us. And just in terms of the lineup, you know, we've got the traditional names that we're all familiar with, Boise State Esports, Matt Merck on tank, and we have great players like Chosen and Plato as well. I mean, who really stands out to you? Who are you looking most forward to make some potential plays as we look at the Boise State opening lineup?
The biggest individual, I mean, among many others, Matt Merck just sticks out of my brain because watching him through collegiate and then over just the course of even in contenders and seeing him in the Tier 2 scene and this wrecking ball style that's been played historically, right now we have a lot of that interwoven into this ever-adapting meta that we see even with Pro-Am qualifiers that just recently completed. We did have a lot of this opportunity to see heavy mobility, dive compositions, a lot more centric around that versus this more so Russian brawl type of tactics that have been more prevalent. But there are, of course, some maps that still reside within those types of compositions. But I'm looking forward to seeing what type of methodology and mobility is going to be brought to this in the coordination with the team and how Matt Merck's going to look to try and headway that.
Yeah, whenever you put Matt Merck on a mobile tank, you are in for a show of acrobatics. But no matter what composition the Boise State Broncos are going to be playing, another piece of advice they're going to want to follow is Doc's keys to the game in Overwatch, and that's to understand your comp and play style, focus on each fight, get good ultimate value, and of course, always remember that the objective is ultimately worth more than kills. It's brought to you by Drop In Gaming, the premier online platform for gamers who seek competition. Play your favorite games to win cash and prizes through free and paid entry matches and tournaments. Whether you're new to the scene or a seasoned veteran, Drop In Gaming has the right games and competition for you. Ready to drop into this first match, Boise State versus Rutgers. There's the opening lineup that we can see. Matt Merck on tank, Gob and Chosen, and then we also have Clear and Bagel rounding out the roster for today.
Yeah, and, you know, to look at the roster, too, there has been on a couple of occasions that we've looked at the Boise State roster some adjustment when it comes to the roles that are being brought into this. Clear on occasion we've seen where they bring this Ramatra, but, you know, deviating back to the support line, I think is a really strength to work alongside Bagel, who has been able to work and attempt for that Canadian trials that we've seen in World Cup and be able to audition. And we know the caliber of this team and these individuals on it. And entering into this first map of Control, it's going to be a blistering fight because realistically over the course of this last couple of years for Rutgers, they have been a team and a group of individuals for this university that have really elevated themselves over time, finding themselves in the lower 16, even before that 32. So they're a very competitive team now when we take a look at their overall development, even for Boise State.
And you said it's a blistering fight and it's going to be a blistering fight in the blistering hot sun as Oasis is the stage that we are starting out on. The gates are going to go down. Both teams start charging. And let's see how it goes. Boise State versus Rutgers. Both teams undefeated till this point.
And I like this composition. They're going to utilize Clear on this Tracer to work alongside Matt Merck. Chosen also for the Kiriko to coordinate with this dive. Basically a mirror here. Otherwise, outside of just Iron Man on this Cassidy and the Zenyatta, have to keep watchful eye on this Discord. A little bit of pressure onto Matt Merck, but still gets the elimination first. That's a lot going to be strained on the back of Neutral to keep this team alive and see if that value from the extra damage boost is there. But unfortunately, the kills come through with a swift pick from Clear, making this an easy tank for Boise State as they rotate back to the point.
take, and also that Wrecking Ball a bit low on health, but not going to be enough for Boise State to put a stagger. But Madmerk is still rotating through, keeping everyone at bay. Clear also gets a pick onto neutral. That's going to keep Rutgers University at bay for a little bit more and give Boise State a bit more charge on that point.
Yeah, and they can just be really, really precise right now. Clear was able to generate that pulse bomb, so can look for that one pick opportunity onto one of the back lines, force out the Suzu, eliminate those cooldowns from the equations, and make them feel a lot more confident on this engagement.
Oh, and talking about this pulse bomb, Clear is ready and hunting. He's going to have to recall back, though. Didn't quite like the look of that angle. Going to regroup with Madmerk as Boise State is looking to pinch both sides of Rutgers University in. Not too much damage going out, but now Ajax down to half health. Goblin's turret is going to be eliminated as they make their way on toward the point. Madmerk is putting all the damage that he can onto Ajax. There goes the pulse bomb. Is going to take out Iron Man. Boise State now goes up one in this team fight. Their Wrecking Ball has also, Boise State has charged up their minefield. Madmerk is going to use it pretty darn fast. Wiz uses their pulse bomb to try to bring things back. It looks to be a very scrappy fight. A fight back from Wiz and Ajax. Might be bringing the point back to Rutgers, depending on how this fight goes off to the side.
You know, despite Goblin going down from the pile driver, getting the hammer kill is always a glory to see in the kill feed when you take a look at precision and play. And again, this chipping damage that's coming through from a flanking angle from Boise State is really substantial. It's catching Rutgers off guard. Now there's this chase around the backside. Even though there are a few down from Boise State, you've got Madmerk maintaining this position, keeping it contested. Even if they lose it in the long run, they've generated such a high accumulation of percentage that there is going to be this long run opportunity to retaliate, come back into this, and finally Rutgers is able to stem the bleeding. The Molten Core will zone them back, and they should be able to get this before it enters the 99.
It should be in one team fight territory for Boise State, but as you can see, both of these tanks, both Madmerk and Ajax, even when the fight is over, they are not done by any means. They are going back and kind of harassing these supports. And Goblin was the one to be taken out by Rutgers, keeping Boise State at bay for just a little more. But now we'll see how they do as they go into these next team fights with two great ultimates to start the engage.
Down below, hesitancy before full entry. Just getting some chip damage to near that pulse bomb, which is another win condition if they can find a pick as they had before. But Iron Man is now on more of that mobile high ground positioning gained. Also with the one-shot potential with the damage that can be generated when you're putting that much pressure onto Madmerk. Pile drive into the back. Dual Kiriko ultimates crossing paths. Who will yield more value? It will be Rutgers, since they've opted to go in for the Transcendence to sustain through all the extra damage. Goblin has been removed, and most likely Boise State falling back and looking for one last contestant. Both support ultimates are now gone.
Goblin swaps over to Sojourn, trying to match Rutgers at their own game. Boise State in that fight, though, only spent one ultimate, whereas Rutgers used about everything in their bank. The pulse bomb's going to go out from Clear, but it doesn't look like it finds anybody. Turret's going to be taken out by Bagel, giving Madmerk a little bit more room to work with, and the sound barrier is going to be used by Boise State to help them try to sustain through this team fight. Clear takes out Iron Man to start things off. Wiz is going to be the next to fall. Now the pressure goes back onto the point, and Ajax trying to stall this out. He is melted down, and Boise State now takes back control of the point.
Extremely methodical, knowing the win condition here, utilizing the ultimates towards the tail end of it, and the fact, again, that they force out that Transcendence from neutral during the Kiriko Kitsune rush is an absolute boon for Boise State, and they know that they've got one in the chamber still to be tossed out into the mix, and look for that long run aspect because they gain such a high percentage early, 95%, and then finally being contested. And because they've accrued that much, it gives them so much more wiggle room to play their game at their tempo, and I'd like to see that continue, especially with the coordination that we're getting from Madmerk and Clear on these flanking angles, looking for that opportunity to get some chip damage and draw attention away from the focus that you'd like to see Rutgers continue to have.
We now head into the second map. Boise State in a position to take this away and get the first game in this best of three, which kind of in the protracted length is always nicer. Puts a whole lot of pressure onto the other team, more so than a best of five. Both teams are going to be meeting each other kind of on the high ground. Boise State has taken a route off to the left, and the old Wrecking Ball is going to run into each other. Ajax knocks Goblin off. And everything is off to a very chippy start as a trade 1-for-1 goes back and forth between the teams.
Yeah, just gets the nice angular momentum off the grapple, catching Goblin off guard, opting to make the swap here onto the Echo, so does have this elevated play. There's not really any major hit scan to contest against it, more specifically going to be... Actually, they opted back to go to the Dwarf. All right, we're going to keep that then. Never mind. Torbjorn going to stick around. Decision changed. I mean, it's going to be hard if you're going to come out on the Echo because Wiz has that turret and sentry mode to be able to eliminate anybody. But all the while, even though Boise State is down, they're still taking 2 neutrals eliminated. And Clear and Mattmerk in synergy work so well together on this dive.
Clear isn't just great in the synergy, but he's also #1 in terms of the ultimate game. He has that pulse bomb all charged up. Rutgers University is pretty close on theirs, now nearing past 90%. So we could see dueling pulse bombs go out for this next team fight. Rutgers University tries to regroup and go for the retake.
And you can see that Goblin's anchoring over towards that stairway, since they know they can fall back into the turret as coverage. Harassment, though. Decent shots. Making it not so easy for Iron Man. And there's a pulse bomb onto neutral. Left alone. No peel. And this is where the Zenyatta can be really, really oppressed and just denied any availability in these combats because there's no real escape. We don't have the Lucio boot. We don't have a Baptiste immortality feel. You've got the Suzu, but if it's timed incorrectly, moments like that happen. And this is Boise State still tanking this.
And it's the ultimate problem with a Zenyatta is that unless you're the one who's really popping off and getting those headshots and being kind of the de facto third DPS, he is just not the most mobile support hero. Can be caught out rather easily if he's position drawn.
And look at the chip damage coming in from the turret. Again, this is why the Torbjorn is so viable when you have a Tracer play like this, especially when it comes to Gardens, because you have that elevated position, it has a lot higher vantage point, and now Clear continues to flourish in the back line, since this is a lot of discombobulation from Rutgers, and they aren't able to gain a level footing.
Mattmerk taking one final look at the point because Ajax has been pretty mobile himself, so Boise State doesn't want the point to get stolen out from under them. And now they have charged just about basically all of their ultimates up. Clear are very close on this pulse bomb. Everything's going to be available for the Broncos in a very crucial final fight.
Minefield instantly active to counteract this. Goblin zones off with a Molten Core, and unfortunately Iron Man finds themselves, despite their dashing ability, locked in lava and melting to the ground. And now just pummeling the rest of the few that are here from Rutgers, and Boise State at this point looking extremely dominant on the control map. And Mattmerk in the end of this gets a 2-piece with the Minefield. Ajax isn't going to last long in this world, despite them having to spin to win around the pillar. So that's Boise State taking this first map and putting themselves now on a match point.
Great job by the Broncos, and we'll see who gets the special nod in this particular instance. It's going to be Mattmerk, who we were talking about. You called him out at the very beginning, and it's him doing work with the Minefield play.
Right at the end of it. There's that little undertext as well where it says their name and then All-Star underneath it. That's meant to be. Like that's why it's there, because we have really recognized what this Wrecking Ball and Mattmerk can do, especially in what this meta is looking to fold out to be.
Well, definitely an all-star supporter of Boise State Esports is the Idaho Army National Guard, who brings us the top 5 plays for each game. And yeah, Idaho Army National Guard invites you to take your impressive critical thinking skills into real time. More than 10 jobs offering a $20,000 bonus and your degree of choice paid for. Idaho Army National Guard is one of the best teams to join out there. Reach out to them on Twitch at iGuard Gaming. So we did see, though, there were a few times that Rutgers was able to wrestle things back from Boise State, although Boise State really benefited by, I think, just building up such huge leads. I mean, especially on the first point, they were already at 95% before Rutgers could even take it back from them.
Yeah, and when you take that type of advantage that early, and the biggest thing is that Rutgers aren't playing as badly, it's just they're finding themselves vulnerable in not so ideal positions, because when you're allowing Clear to, one, get these pulse bombs for free, you need to potentially either look at one of two things: your compositional adjustment when it comes to the support to have some kind of peel and deny them that early accessibility, or you need to find something, as we saw when it came to the Torbjorn play from Goblin, to start chipping away at the Tracer. Make it much more challenging for that Tracer to gain value. And right now, so far, Boise State's been able to keep this applied pressure consistently without anything really denying it, so they have no reason to deviate away from it.
Yeah, well, we are going to see. Mainly, I would be most curious about Rutgers does in terms of the situation of their support, since Boise State's choices just kind of gives them that much more mobility with the Lucio and all the speed boosts that he can bring into the mix. And now we'll see what the map choice is going to be. It isn't too much of a mystery for us. Good old classic Kings Row to close things out if the Broncos win.
I really do, for one of these days, want to take the actual time to go back into my statistics brain and just find out what the percentage ratio is that we see Kings Row versus any other hybrid. Like, I would actually guarantee it's probably in the 90th percentile. Like, it's up there. It's gotta be. Just for how much we see it. But it's a good baseline because everyone at this point knows where the floor is and can then build up structurally to allow themselves to become more formidable against their opponent. And as we do take a look at it, it will be most likely from at least just the colors, and assuming that it would be Boise State on the defense here and Rutgers coming out on the attack. And biggest aspect of this now, going to Kings Row, typically we've seen some assistance from a tank line being more so a D.Va to cause some assistance if they keep the Zenyatta play, or if they're going to potentially bring, you know, an adjustment with the Reinhardt to be a little bit more brawly on this point to try and deviate away from this more so dive composition with a Wrecking Ball, or Wrecking Ball Winston. So I can't wait to see what the selection is from the opposing side once they have these doors open.
I believe I see a Sigma being brought out by Rutgers on their attack. Oh, they're going to be going for the Symmetra teleport up onto Theater. Wiz is also bringing out the Widowmaker. A couple interesting choices here for Rutgers. More unorthodox, but we'll see if it works.
Yeah, Wiz actually going to look for that first initial pick, as we do see, where they can maybe get somebody early. Goblin, though, tucked back, supports around the hotel, so there's no reason to stick on to that Widowmaker. Now adjusting onto the Sojourn, again, to really get that chip damage in, generating those rail shots, finding the one-shot potential, and Iron Man also playing this elevated angle with the Echo. It can bring value, but again, you have to be so cognizant of where this turret is from the Torbjorn, and all the while that there's focus on either going for Iron Man or anything else in the options, it's really just Clear taking out the back line outright.
I know, Clear is making Neutral's job just a living heck right now. Unless you can really land that Orb of Discord and, you know, pop off on your headshot, it is tough to hit a hero that mobile. Speaking of mobile, Rutgers University looks like they might be trying to get a few ticks. Almost was halfway to the first tick, but Matt Merck holding down Hotel has proven to be a big problem for them. Ajax is going to hit them with the Accretion. The Orb of Discord is also placed onto him, but not too much damage to follow it up. Matt Merck is still just doing what he wants to on point.
Yeah, the Adaptive Shield comes out perfectly when they do finally see Wiz in the corner. Goblin gets the elimination onto Iron Man. The biggest thing that Rutgers is taking advantage of is trying to keep point presence, because Boise State is looking to round and find the best opportunity to engage us, because they can't just take it head on. They need to find an opportunity to be able to collapse as a 5 to gain the value. You even have Goblin trying to harass the back line onto Neutral, who, mind you, has the nano boost, finally pops off with a couple of shots. Not the volley, but still something of worth, and Matt Merck gets overwhelmed. This is what's really starting to work for Rutgers, because they're mainly just anchoring themselves on this point, forcing Boise State to play around them.
Boise State is going to get caught out in Hotel, have to move back through the choke point as Rutgers starts pushing the payload north of about 4 minutes. Neutral also finally gets his revenge onto Clear. That's got to be one that just feels good for a moral victory, if you will.
That's like having a cake pop early in the morning, and you're just like, yeah, I probably shouldn't have had this, but man, does it taste so good. Because there's 4 minutes on the clock to work their way through the streets phase. Very forward momentum by Rutgers. They've got a few ultimates online as well to try and hold them here. The biggest thing is we don't want to see them play too overzealous, where you're going to have either Matt Merck or Clear get a pickup and put them into an uncomfortable position to be held at that bookstore corner.
A whole lot of ultimates also in both teams' pockets. Who's going to be the first to ult to start things off? Matt Merck trying to find some sort of a good angle, as well as Bagel. And we're very low on health. Ajax is taken down. He's going to duck back, get healed up. We have a mid-air battle going on between Clear and Iron Man. The multi-core is going to be popped, as well as the pulse bomb for Boise State. But it doesn't find anybody, as Rutgers is going to be able to cancel it out with the healing from that Transcendence. Kitsune used by Boise State, trying to bring things back. It's a whole lot of flashy ultimates, but ultimately it's going to be mostly a team fight to bring things back. And a nice sound barrier to help Boise State survive through this Gravitic. The overcharge also comes out from Wiz, taking out Matt Merck. It's a fight to the very bitter end with a double from Wiz. Rutgers manages to take back the payloads.
Yeah, that was a lot put into this, though, by Rutgers. I mean, same in respects from Boise State, but it was just the synergy of having the overclock onto the lacking mobility. Matt Merck locked into that small position. The nano boost as well comes in to contribute. Everything starts working wonders because Iron Man also has the focusing beam. It's that increased damage when below the 50%, so the rail shot plus that in synergy onto Matt Merck really, really does make that health value look insignificant. But upon re-entry, there is a massive pickup here, an adjustment from Goblin onto the Widow, which we've seen before, and just causing attention to be driven away by both these heavy mobile characters of Matt Merck and Clear gives Goblin free angles.
They managed to stop the payload just before the checkpoint as well. Boise State is going to get a bit of time to regroup. Goblin is changing once again, this time moving on to the Sombra. So he's kind of putting on a whole class of how to play DPSs of any kind today.
Bagel getting that intel, marking exactly where everyone's positioned so that both Clear and Matt Merck can look for a dive. But there's so much hesitancy from Rutgers. They know that they don't want to lean into this too heavily. They have to find an angle that can favor them. The recall's already out from Iron Man, and now they're left defenseless. They only have the dashes available, and you can see on the reverse side, though, great opportunity by getting rid of Clear from this equation, and Rutgers can have a chance to come back into this, and Goblin again opting to take a swap.
Neutral also gets a pick onto Bagel. The payload is back within their wheelhouse. Matt Merck is going to move in, use his shields, and try to spin to win here on the payload. A lot of focus going out on him. And Region looks like it's going to catch him for a few seconds. Clear also moving back onto the payload, trying to find one quick pick, one quick angle. You also see Goblin fighting up with Ajax on the high ground. Matt Merck swings up to bail him out, puts the minefield down. It's answered back by the Transcendence, and Kitsune also used for Boise State. When the ultimates are used for this game, it is going all in. 2 times in a row, both teams using everything they have.
Desperation play by a lot of those ultimates at this point. You do still have Rutgers with one last opportunity to push this the final mile. They're going to actually re-enter onto this. They're going to take the Kitsune Rush and lead in since Goblin had to translocate back to reset the hack. They've got the space. Can they have enough on the front side to mitigate until everyone's back into it with the EMP? It lands onto 4, but there's already Clear eliminated. 4 players remaining from Boise State to attempt and hold this choke point. It's becoming a real challenge, especially since you had Rutgers really catch Boise State off guard with his re-entry.
The overclock is also not making matters any better for the Broncos. Matt Merck gets taken out. Goblin and Bagel are the next to fall. The checkpoint is reached for Rutgers, but because these fights have been so long and drawn out, they are not going to have much time to get to the end. Just a little over a minute. We see a fight also breaking out from the side here.
They're most likely going to look to try and play the second corner. That first one has an opportunity, but you want to make sure that you have enough to counteract against this. Goblin, Clear, and Matt Merck are going to be a force to be reckoned with once they isolate a target. Keeping this payload now just before the final bend. Matt Merck in the back looking for a nice flanking maneuver onto the supports. Again, drawing attention away from Rutgers on the front side to make the life of Ajax a little bit more complicated and where they need to keep this shield residing.
Complicated is the word to describe it, because with all the movement from Matt Merck and Goblin, I don't know what front the Broncos want to take. It seems like every front, and they are able to collapse onto 2 from Rutgers. Wiz and Iron Man are going to be taken out. Neutral is going to end Matt Merck's frenzy, but those 2 eliminations are enough for Boise State to keep Rutgers at bay, and a crucial final fight with less than 30 seconds remaining is going to decide it here.
Whenever I'm on the POV of Matt Merck on the Wrecking Ball, I feel like I'm in a roller coaster. Like, it's just
true.
Sit back, enjoy, and the peaks and valleys are going to be a thrill. As now they enter the final fight, 10 seconds to go, minefield available. You have the Transcendence already forced out. Neutral uses it offensively, not in a state of critical health value, so they lose that now and have to follow up immediately with the Kitsune Rush. This needs to gain value, but the biggest problem is playing around this corner. Boise State is able to back off, stick near the health pack, and continue to wait for it to deviate away and finally be no longer of value. And then they can re-enter with multiple ultimates of their own. The hack onto Ajax, the Flux not ready yet, the Kitsune Rush overwhelming. They're looking for a pick, but gets denied. by the EMP. Surprisingly activates it quick enough to get rid of Goblin, but that's only going to be one player of 4 that remain. And you've got Boise State able to hold them here. They've cauterized and denied Rutgers a completion.
Holy moly, and the one time we have an ultimate saved at the end of the fight, it's just for Bagel to do a little emoting at the end. But Boise State, most crucially, holding Rutgers to only 2, the distance a little over 57 meters. That means that, at least for our sakes, we are not going to be seeing an overtime here. It is now a win or lose situation for the Broncos as they move on to attack.
Well done. Well done. I mean, even though there was still a significant amount of cart progress here, I have to give major credit at least for the recovery towards the end of it. Rutgers really caught Boise State off guard because Boise State was looking for the reset. They knew that they had the translocate. They gave space and time, but at that point, Rutgers said, you know what? We've actually got a moment here to where we can take advantage of that with Kitsune Rush. So because there is that displacement and assumption of extra time at your disposal by Boise State, it catches Clear off. They get them shut down. The Kitsune Rush boosts the damage and just the tempo that you can enter back into it, allowing them to get at least into that home stretch. Great recovery, though, and ultimate management by Boise State to deny the completion.
We'll see what the choice is for attack and defense. We see the Torb is being brought back out for Rutgers. Well, it's still staying on that Zenyatta. It doesn't look like too many things are changed between either team. Boise State going with a rather similar composition to what Rutgers had, minus the Sigma. Going to be trying to find a pick on this Widowmaker gob.
All right, let's see how much value this can bring to the table. Keeping the same composition with the Sigma. I do like it defensively because it can hold a little bit more angles. The accretion is there. Also, the fact the value that's brought by Wiz with this Disruptor shot, holding off certain angles or choke points to deny access point. But Matt Merck, you can see already on a heavy flank, this elevated position by Bagel, chipping away damage, forcing Rutgers back. They can't play too offensively just yet because they're being surrounded at the moment. The accretion goes wide. Hack comes in. Goblin opens on this quickly, and this will be a masterclass of mobility around Rutgers from Boise.
This Sigma is caught out in the hotel. Boise State is going to stagger him out for as long as possible and guarantee that they take this payload all in one fight. And it's amazing with how mobile Matt Merck is. By the time he actually got to his flank and had pile driven into the other team, Clear and Goblin were just there like, I already got you. We've already cleared him out. So we'll see if Matt Merck can do very well on this flank here, or if Gob and Clear just clear out everything again.
Yeah, just making space, taking every inch that they can at this point, and they've got the time bank to do so. Even if they manage to get themselves a little bit slowed for the moment, and you've got Rutgers holding this corner, that's great. The biggest problem is if they get locked in under this archway. That's where Rutgers can look to milk out a lot of time on this, where the payload is presently. If they hold this choke point, we've seen several minutes worth defensively, because there really are only 2 major access points that you can maneuver through outside of the upper window. And ooh, that's getting a little scary for Ajax, but they get the accretion onto Chosen, and they lock them in place.
Broncos were everywhere at every single time. You even saw Chosen off to the side, doing some flanking on his own with the Kariko. I mean, I understand they don't want to get caught in the archway, but at the same time, I don't think any of them were really able to focus targets, because all of them were going after a different target.
4 minutes, though. You can see Goblin chipping away to get towards that EMP. The massive opportunity as the pile drive up top and the minefield come through. Counter EMP from Iron Man lands onto 3. Nice cleanse, though, from the Suzu onto Goblin and to Clear, but there's still a lot of tension from Iron Man on the back, denying Goblin from utilizing their EMP after the Suzu comes in and holds them by the payload again for the bookstore.
Rutgers University is going to hold Boise State, and they're going to go south of 4 minutes. They were doing a bit of healing on Chosen, trying to get him away from the extending push from Rutgers. They've now taken the payload back. Boise State has just been silently biding their time, and this is the first time we're also seeing Matt Merck swap off. Is now going to be moving on to the Winston, but he's going to have to wait a little longer to go into action because a stagger onto Clear is going to cost the Broncos even more time.
It's a value pick. I mean, you can bypass the shield. Matt Merck with the Tesla cannon, also with the shielding, just looking to take space and outmaneuver Ajax, forcing them defensively not to reside into it. The other part of this, too, is when you also see some of the supports. If you put the shield up in placement, you can deny a lot of the healing that can come through. There is a big dive, though. They forced out the Transcendence onto neutral. That is a huge gain, despite them still losing. There is Kitsune Rush in counter, though. Chosen using the Kitsune Rush matches it, so that's not as beneficial as it could have been.
Boise State only spending the Kitsune Rush for that point. Basically, that fight forced out one support ultimate. Exactly. Goblin is also looking on this EMP, trying to find the right angle. We'll see how many he can land it on. And Boise State can finally break through Rutgers' defense.
Yeah, they haven't had a chance to do so. Goblin's been waiting to use this and has been denied it on 3 separate occasions at this point. First on the elimination from being hacked, and the second just because the team unfortunately couldn't gain anything. There's both supports getting clipped. Neutral is instantly blown to Kingdom Come. And now it's going to be 2 minutes and 15 seconds to try and eliminate the last couple around this corner and look for the stretch to reach that checkpoint and see if they can complete with that final home stretch.
It's going to be pretty close if Rutgers can get back to that payload. There is going to be at least one more team fight before the checkpoint. Boise State, when they were defending, held Rutgers just 2 meters from the checkpoint. So now Rutgers is going to have to do the same thing, but just roll reverse. Only one ultimate is left for the Broncos, and they're going to use it to start things off.
Yep. So, oh, what a huge pick out the gate. They deny the overclock. The sound barrier gives Boise State so much space to work with, and they can play a little bit more recklessly. But as I say that, Bagel, I think just maybe a little too reckless, as the payload now needs to be focused back. You don't want Boise State to give them time to be able to deny this checkpoint reach. The Flux denies it. An EMP comes in by Iron Man. It's 2 meters to go. Boise State overextends with the sound barrier and don't allow themselves to reach the checkpoint until finally they force back the remaining 2 with Clear sweeping in to change the outcome.
Boise State is going to have 1 more minute than Rutgers did to make the same amount of distance, so maybe 1 or 2 team fights still left. We have a last-minute swap being brought out by Rutgers. Are going to be bringing it out onto the Bastion. We'll see if a last-minute stand by Rutgers can keep us going through Game 3.
Primal Rage is active, so they have so much disruption on the back line, but they're instantly just going to take down the Zen play, and with the Pulse Bomb, they hyper-focused Wiz onto Matt Merck, so Clear can come in from a side angle, denying that positional advantage and the amount of damage that the Bastion brings to the equation, and with one swift fight in the final stretch, they are able to completely isolate Rutgers, take this win, and put themselves at a now 7-0 over their opponent, who finally receives their first L.
But they are going to get a final piece of recommendation with the player of the game, the play of the game going over to Wiz. That's a great play on this overclock, and Boise State lost multiple matches in that second half. But I think the thing that stands out to me most, we'll get to after I mention Drop-In Gaming, the premier online platform for gamers who seek competition. Play your favorite games to win cash and prizes through free and paid entry matches and tournaments. Whether you're new to the scene or a seasoned veteran, Drop-In Gaming has the right games and competition for you. So the thing that really stood out to me most is from beginning to end on attack and defense, really, too, especially after the pick for Winston goes in. Boise State, till the very end, was a dive team. Every single team fight they won was taking out the supports. And then when you've just got the Sigma left all by himself, that's the point where all his health and all of his survivability kind of comes into your advantage, because you can keep it alive for a good long bit of time and put a very heavy stagger onto the other team.
Yeah, and I mean, ultimately, this is what we're starting to see it lean into when we take a look at a lot of, let's say, Overwatch teams. We've got a lot of Pro-Am to look towards this just extremely coordinated dive and strategy behind how to enter into fights, picking up those significant players like the Zen in the backline, or deleting DPS, damage dealer. There's so many ways that you can attack it, but the most significant part is understanding how you communicate with one another and have the most effective dive against your opponent.
Well, Boise State is now going to go to 7-0. Rutgers now 6-1 after that match. Do you have any other final thoughts before we close things out, Rich Rad?
I mean, the biggest thing right now, you continue to climb up this pedestal and put your name up there. And with a lot of other teams that you have in the collegiate space that you have to fight against, they should definitely be keeping a watchful eye, because Boise State's got the talent and they have the drive to be able to do as well as they are further down the rest of this. And before we even get into that group stage.
Well, that's going to close us out for this ABC match. Thank you, Rich Rad, for joining us, and thank all of you on Twitch for joining us as well. We'll leave you with the top 5 plays of the game, brought to you by the Idaho Army National Guard, inviting you to take your impressive critical thinking skills into real time. More than 10 jobs offering a $20,000 bonus and your degree of choice paid for. Idaho Army National Guard is one of the best teams to join out there. Reach out to them on Twitch. Have a nice evening, and enjoy your top 5 plays.
מבושל, אני מבושל, אני מבושל, מכין מגולגל וטס לחלל. אני מבושל, אני מבושל, אני מבושל, אני מתוגל, אני מטורלל, אני מחושמל, אני מבושל, אני מבושל, מכין מגולגל וטס לחלל, וטס לחלל, וטס לחלל, וטס לחלל.
Welcome to the Boise State Esports Arena. You're watching our coverage of NACE Hearthstone. Boise State looking to keep their undefeated record in the season so far well and alive as they face off against Edgewood. Sure to be a very exciting match here tonight as the Broncos are loading into the arena in person, ready to compete with each other, so I'm sure you'll hear a lot of cheers and hollering from them back there, as well as a lot of cheers from us up here. Your host, Jacob Palmer, and Rich Rad joining for all of the action. And, you know, tonight for the Broncos is really kind of keep your spotless image tonight, because we started out with them maintaining their undefeated record in ABC. Now we move on to NACE, where they are also undefeated, going up against Edgewood.
Well, and to put a little bit more precedence on it as well, is if they are able to take this, it guarantees the playoff spot. So it's even more so to play for versus just to be able to have a clean record so far of not being able to lose against an opponent. And we just got lucky today, didn't we? We just got lucky having two extremely competitive games that are here. And now we're going to have this one be a little bit more extensive, though. It's going to be a 1-3 for us. So gives a little more opportunity for their opponents to be able to fight back if Boise State takes the lead in this regard. But ultimately, both these teams have everything to play for.
And it's kind of serendipitous that you mentioned, you know, playoff season, because we can't forget how the Broncos did last playoff season, currently defending NACE Star League champions. So they've got a lot to prove, and so far this season, they've been rising up to the occasion, and no doubt that's because they have played so well and have followed all of the keys to advice that we give to them, including Doc's keys to the game in Overwatch. And that's to understand your comp and play style, focus on each fight, get good ultimate value, and of course remember that the objective is worth more than kills. It's all brought to us by Drop-In Gaming, the premier online platform for gamers who seek competition. Play your favorite games to win cash and prizes through free and paid entry matches and tournaments. Whether you're a new to the scene or a seasoned veteran, Drop-In Gaming has the right games and competition for you. So we prepared to start off this NACE matchup. You can see the players loading in there. We see Gob, a great DPS, and of course, as we switch cameras, Matt Merck as well. And I don't know how much more we can say about this lineup, Rich Rad.
Yeah, I mean, we already got to see a great demonstration of it earlier, and we're going to see it do so again. And realistically, when we take a look at the history of how so far NACE has been going, at least for this segment, I mean, it's only been one map dropped when it comes to Boise State. They've not lost. They've only dropped one map, and it was to Mizzou last round, which was in their round 6. And their opponent is basically neck and neck with them outside of just taking one additional loss on a specific map. So both of them have been able to demonstrate that they are extremely valiant and worthy players. And ultimately, with what we already saw, I would not be surprised to see a lot more of this heavy type of dive, more coordinated play, flanking positioning, and seeing if there is any sort of deviation away from it, because they've been keeping their watchful eye on how Boise State's been playing, because they need to figure out some sort of option to them to be able to counteract the way that they've been playing.
And another thing I'm going to be looking for is, as we're starting out on Control, I'm also going to be looking for just how much of a margin Boise State, if they are to take the point first, or for Edgewood, should they take the point first, how much of a margin they will take in the point. Because we've seen, you know, once you get a very good full charge on it, you're in the driver's seat with a lot of time management.
Well, and even when it comes to just control map selection, I mean, Antarctic Peninsula has been one of them that has been in discussion. Again, we don't have confirmation, at least on my end of it, for what we're going to first, but knowing that that's somewhat in the mix, that also has deviated tremendously away from it. Whether we see it or not, it's just a topic of discussion that I think a lot of teams have really looked into, because it brings in this very unique dynamic of a Reinhardt Bastion type of play, or an adaptation where it's just this very unique methodology behind it. But then you do see some of those tried and true seams, like we saw from Pro-Am, where it was Saints, the combination of Maryville, Northwood, and other OWL level talent sticking to their guns on this Winston dive comp, attempting to counteract against it, even though it's challenging. So just talking about the control maps in and of itself, there's a lot of viable options across the board that can be brought to it. And leading with Boise State, I'm not going to be surprised to see the wrecking ball. And like I said, it's more so, how is Edgewood going to be able to counteract it?
Well, we have a lot of questions, a lot of speculation, but I'm told by production that we're going to have to wait just a little bit longer to have all our questions answered. We are going to be throwing to a short break and be getting back with the start of this match, so you are not going to want to go away.
Growing up in Riggins, we have certain rules we live by. Look both ways before crossing the street. Fishing stories get better the more you tell them. Small town life makes your life anything but small. Never work alone when you go hunting. And always buckle up. Seatbelts save lives. That's a rule we can all live by.
Idaho Central Credit Union, looking after your daily balance. Home is where you hang your hat, snuggle up, hide out. Home is when you're with the ones you love. It isn't just a place, it's a state of mind. At Idaho Central Credit Union, our home is Idaho. We grew up here, and we're proud to help more Idahoans with their home.
Welcome back to the Boise State Esports Arena. You've got Jem and Rich Rad holding down the fort for you, calling the action for this NACE Overwatch match. And we're going to be getting into the action pretty quick here, Rich Rad. And I got to say, I don't know what the area is tonight, but, I mean, you've been calling things out pretty well. And we were talking a little bit about Antarctic Peninsula. That's where we're heading going into this first match of this best of 5.
You know, every once in a while, I just get on a streak that I just really should ride the whole way. I just got to make sure I go get either a lottery ticket or something at the moment. And maybe I'll find myself with another victory. But as we're entering into this, the one thing we're looking for is the victory from one of these teams. And you can already see that we're entering into, as you mentioned, this Arctic Peninsula. And curious to see what the composition is. And it's surprisingly vastly different than what we've seen.
Cal is going to be bringing on the Junker Queen for this match, helping hold down that high ground, getting the charge a little bit ways toward claiming this point, is now going to drop down to ground level, try to chase after this D.Va, gets a defense matrix in his face. Now they got to transfer back up to high ground. That Mercy almost eliminated by Plato on that Bastion is going to be able to take out the Pharah.
Yeah, and taking out the Pharah, there is a res, though, so Edgewood has been able to bring that back into the mix here. The composition is extremely interesting. Cal being on this Junker Queen, looking to really give that commanding shout to give extra protection to Plato, who can bring a ton of damage onto this Bastion, but it's still uncontested yet to the point of where it's swapped to someone's side. There is a great carnage to come out, eliminating one of the supports, so now it's all on the shoulders of James, and as the health and the long-run fight continues, this is leading just ever so slightly in favor of Boise State.
You also see this right here for Edgewood College is going to do a bit of scouting. Swap them out and be able to teleport back. Boise State now sitting on a Kitsune. And they also got the Bastion hold available to them as well. Edgewood College has a whole lot more in their pocket. But Boise State's going to take the initiative by ulting first.
Yeah, looking to try and zone them back. Edgewood just going to mitigate, maneuver away from the 3 shots that are necessary. This pharmacy composition is an interesting one because, yeah, there's a lot of positioning that you can hide and lucratively move through. The architecture is great when you can block a lot of sight lines, but when you're going into a Bastion like this, that's so dangerous. And I know that you have the defense matrix as well, which is mitigating a lot of this frontline pressure and damage that's coming out from the Junker Queen. Goblin also taking a interesting angle with this Widowmaker shot onto Luke, who unfortunately can't be denied two-piece with that rocket barrage, and Edgewood College is going to be able to start cleaning up the rest, but Kel at this point is just holding percent and rounding that center column.
He's getting the Broncos pass almost to 60%. The Broncos are going to have their first reset. Gollum also holding on to a bit of health, trying to get some sort of pick. Plato is going to be able to take out James, but overall this is the first reset the Broncos are going to be faced with.
I'm partially jarred at what I'm seeing, but at the same time, I'm all for it. Like, we deviating away from anything that we've seen so far and how this is going to work wonders for them. And when you're in a position like this where it's a even scoreline and you're fighting for playoff spot, you know, out of the ordinary and uniquely selected options might be the way to do so, as there's a great pickup before the remix that denies Edgewood from having a front line to mitigate this incoming damage, especially when Plato swapped onto the Scastic.
He is just one-clicking all of those airborne heroes out from the air. That Mercy is just running away to safe harbor. Boise State's moving past the 75% a mark, so now we're getting into final fight territory. Kel has charged up his ultimate. Edgewood College also is only close to one ultimate. It's gonna be the nano boost on this Ana, but that's the only thing they have to possibly bring this back.
Yeah, because there's such a significant amount of percentage needing to be gained. Well, I was going to say, that's who you're looking towards, is how valuable that Sombra can be, and is cleaning this up. A Rampage does clip James. Little overzealous here. I feel like they didn't have any sort of opportunity to execute the selected target. They just get away scot-free with the positioning from Luke on the Pharah, and James is able to really just not have to worry at all about the follow-up from Kel. So, with this into the overtime, there's a chance for Edgewood to take this back. They've generated the EMP. The biggest thing here is you cannot allow this EMP to go early. They have to take this by sheer force. They managed to do so, but James is down. This is looking a little bit more treacherous for Edgewood.
Hack is going to go out to the majority of the Broncos, and Kel is the first to fall. Chosen also hanging on to dear life. He's healing up, but Plato is also taken out thanks to this barrage from Edgewood College. They're using their ults as soon as they get them, however. Ana is eliminated by Lyric. Boise State still trying to hold on to the point. Chosen trying to be the best DPS in his own right, trying to keep everyone alive and at bay so Boise State can come in on the retake.
That was scary. If Luke got domed, that would have been decisive. And now you can even see Edgewood's actually a little bit away from the point here. Goblin gets one onto back in, and now making sure that there is a numbers advantage. Gets a second, mind you, while the self-destruct is being thrown into the air. What a beautiful pickup from Boise State, able to zone back the last few. Edgewood, unfortunately, can't have enough numbers-wise to keep this contested as Boise State looks to take this first round.
They're going to eke out a victory. They're 100-83. One thing that really stood out to me is just how sticky those tanks were. Especially, you know, you think of Kel on the Junker Queen in the face of that nano-boosted D.Va managed to stick around. And then Jacober's not to be outdone himself. He was managed to charge up a whole self-destruct by himself on the point. These tanks are really proven to be kind of the main anchors that are keeping these team fights going through a team's respawn.
Yeah, it's so unique, too, because we're not talking about, like, picking up some of the strategies that we saw in Pro-Am or some of, like, the Pro League stuff. We're talking a huge deviation away from it. Like, this is just, like, collegiate at its best. When they don't like to follow the meta and try and find something quirky in moments like these, I'm all for it. And now that we've got 20 seconds before this control point becomes active, we enter in onto Icebreaker. And this one's very unique because there is this overhead platform that provides coverage from elevated angles. So it's really going to rely on both Luke and Goblin to find these middle of the elevated and high ground angles to just lay damage into these choke points and into these smaller corridors, because there are so many different avenues that you can work through on this map, especially if you start getting towards the engine room in the back where the mega pack is, or even across this front deck where you can have some great recoveries from maintenance and healing, but there is a lot more open space.
Pack is going to be sent back on that Sombra. And I find this a very interesting swap over. You saw Boise State kind of sniping out this Pharmercy with the DPS heroes, but now Goblin wants to meet them in the air on this Echo. It's not going to work out in that case as the Ana takes him out. It is a 1-for-1 trade overall. Plato finding himself with a possible angle on this Ana. He throws the nade to Hero Self up, and Plato isn't able to seal the deal. Despite all these fights that Boise State isn't winning, they are still managing to hold on to the point, but that's not going to be the case for much longer.
Yeah, that's a feels bad moment when you're attempting to go against an Ana and just unfortunately get outplayed for the moment, but they can come back into this with at least 40% feeling strong. It will be swapped over, and now you have to take a look at what this is coordination-wise and also how they enter with the ultimates that they have in their bank.
Talking about ultimates having in the bank, I would say Edgewood College I'd be most concerned about this barrage. They have mostly been successful against the Broncos. Pulse Bomb going to be tried to throw down onto the Ana, but I don't know. This grandma is sticking around no matter what's thrown at her.
What a mind game play. A triple dash reposition to cause Serial to just consistently pivot and still lives, mind you. I don't care that the kill didn't go through. That was just still hilarious to keep an eye on.
Meanwhile, on the point, you have this Wrecking Ball trying to hold down the fort. Chosen is going to move on, start the charge up, but he is now contested as Jacobers moves back into his face. A lot of people critical for the Broncos. The Kitsune is online. A hack is going to be going out onto Kel. Boise State does manage to take back the point, however, in that mess of a fight. The copy is also going to be going on to the Tracer for Goblin. We'll see if he can charge up this post bomb. He does, throws it out, doesn't get that Kiriko as Kiriko's going to bail themselves out with their ability.
But the biggest thing is that they force out the Suzu. That's great. They no longer have that defensively to utilize elsewhere. Now can there be a value gain while that is on cooldown? Because they didn't land it, they could have easily just sidestepped and kept that defensive, but because they've forked it, they have no way to keep their other supports alive, and Edgewood is now going to lose it for the moment, but it's this swap back and forth for Boise State to ultimately take this as long as they can focus fire this remaining Wrecking Ball.
They forced Edgewood College off of the Pharmercy. You see the Sombra is being brought out. And the Tracer, this EMP is online. James is not going to be able to win the Kiriko battle. Boise State keeping things in control, now moving past 90%.
The contribution of the kunai by both James and Chosen are so valuable. Kiriko can just do so much damage if you allow yourself to just play a little bit more aggro in the grand picture here. Great double click. They get Goblin. Suzu guarantees that they are topped up, but what a Bionade to land shortly after. And everything from Edgewood is coming out to really shut down these key components of Boise State. But the unfortunate thing is either Boise State's able to have a even faster recovery with a Suzu, or they know how to play their angles on this point. And again, that overhead and these three specific pillars on this point makes it so much easier for you to rotate around. And that's what's going to help contribute towards Boise State getting this first map.
And the play of the game is going to be going on to Goblin as Echo had a little bit of trouble in the first half trying to take on that Pharmercy, but then one great focus shot onto Luke, and then the Mercy was next on the list. Boise State managed to bring things back, get the victory, start things off right for this best of 5. Well,
yeah, I mean, I'm still mesmerized by that Plato pick. Ovs, great job for that angle. I have to tell you, that was just clean. Even though, like I said, even though the pulse bomb didn't land, that was just clean. I just love seeing that Tracer dash play. It was crazy.
Well, I think the performance between both these teams is so entertaining right now. It would seem unfair just to keep it to myself. So we're actually going to take a quick break, throw to a few replays, and then swap out with Colby D'Angelo Alloway, familiar face here at Boise State for Overwatch. So you're not going to want to miss it. We'll have the next bit of this best of 5 match after this.
Held it.
Took back in the summer, I thought that I would remember how it used to feel, but this isn't real. Now we're over. Take it all, there's nothing left here anyway. We used to talk, but now we don't know what to say. Now we're just two passing strangers. We tried, you lied, goodbye.
Hello and welcome back into the arena. This is still Boise State Nace versus Edgewood. We are going into map 2. Boise State ended up taking control with round 1. Both of these teams, just to remind you of the stakes, are undefeated, fighting for best in group. I am your new host, Colby Alloway, and joining me is Rich Rat. So,
How you
catch me up on
doing?
what we saw last map.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I'm still gonna harp on it. I'm gonna have to like zing Plato a little bit on Twitter at a later time for what we were seeing with the Tracer play. But outside of that, it's been a great overall performance. Antarctic Peninsula being a very unique map, we saw something completely different than what we've seen either in Pro-Am or when we talk about some of the Tier 2 and Tier 1 scene, which is a lot more of this Reinhardt Bastion or Winston coordinated dive. We had Junker Queen, we had D.Va, we had Echo, we had Pharah, we had a Pharmercy. We had so much to play on that first one, so I'm really excited to see now that we're going to deviate away from that to enter onto King's Row. As you can see here in front of us, the tried and true, we're not going anywhere else, as I would love some fish and chips from that corner store right there just behind the bookstore. But yes, it's been exciting. You mentioned it. The stakes are high. I cannot wait to see how it continues to unfold because one of these teams is guaranteeing their slot in this NACE playoffs.
And with that, King's Row is another map where you mentioned the Reinhardt Bastion that's been pretty prolific in recent games, and King's Row is definitely where you can run that, especially on the defensive side. But Boise State sometimes kind of likes to mix it up a little bit on defense, so we might once again see that Junker Queen. Or it looks like a D.Va. Looks like defense is kind of setting up to control the high ground.
Yeah, that's the biggest interest as we're entering into this. And it will be Boise State wanting to stick with this. Hanzo, though, we're going to have a little bit of change-up. No longer with the Tracer play. Looking to flex a little bit, and speaking of flexing, the one for Peace and Tranquility is taking the first dome.
And it looks like with that, Boise State has a little bit of leeway to kind of get a little bit more aggressive, but currently Plato is on the Sombra hunt looking for backing Nam, excuse me, and Luke has the Pocket Mercy in James. This is something we haven't seen just yet. Mercy's not going to be able to stop that, and it looks like they won't be able to get the res either, as Chosen's going to go ahead and corner that tank in the room there with Plato. We're just on a Sombra hunt over on this high ground.
Yeah, but the thing is Goblin's already getting massive value here defensively, holding this angle and getting these shots. I mean, again, we've talked a lot about how there's been this adjustment into the health value, making them feel a lot more vulnerable, but it really hasn't been punished at the moment and is really managing these windows and not getting overwhelmed. As I say that, though, the Wrecking Ball comes in for a pile drive. Great recovery from this D.Va play, and that's really what that helps contribute. Protection and peel from both Chosen and Lyric.
And they definitely need to make sure they're both on there at all times, because That Widow is very fragile, and you see her drop down to 15, drop down to 38, and then immediately after that get directed with the Pharah Barrage, and now this is Edgewood College's way in. They're looking for it. That Sombra takes a lot of missiles to the face there, but is still on point. Kel gonna lose their mech on point. Chosen fine, trying to get some help in this corridor. It looks like they will be unable to keep Lyric up in the face of the barrage, so at least that costs Edgewood something, but at the cost of the ultimate, they're gonna end up taking that first point.
Yeah, the big thing is they only really had to contribute 1 into this, which is their saving grace right now. Boise State having 4 coming up online. There's Infra going to be active to get some insight if they peek their head up, which would be very unfortunate. But yeah, just going to hold back, look to see. And this is the biggest point of contention. Boise State needs to try and anchor themselves in this choke point so that they can deny a lot of time and a lot of distance.
And they've got all 5 members there, and the Widowmaker ultimate is going to go down, enabling Edgewood College away in. That Pharah still knows that Widowmaker is just poking straight through main, just looking for the dome as soon as they can get it. Ball's going to go ahead and roll in. Pharah finally shows her face with an EMP.
Wow.
That is Edgewood College down 1 right now, as Plato's going to get the headshot elimination on the backing Nam as soon as they come in on that Sombra. But Plato will be the price, going down to Luke in the sky on that Pharah. You see the Sombra assist, you see the Ana assist, you see Kel fighting for their life on the point with both orbs and a purple on them. Almost too many status effects to count as we go back into spawn for a little bit, just for a little peek at who's coming back, as Chosen is going to get balled up in the air. We're going to land the sleep, letting both supports live kind of another hour, another day here, as they just kind of really hunker down in this corner to avoid that farmer's.
I'm really surprised at the way that Edgewood is playing right now. They have not given Boise State a beat of breathing room until finally, after some unfortunate positioning with the Pharah underneath the archway with no ability to escape. That's where the pickup comes through. Plato isolates back in and now can look for a hold here around the bookstore, but that looked extremely scary for Boise State for a lot of that push.
And the supports were able to stay alive, so Boise State actually doesn't lose a ton of ground. They've moved from archway to back corner, which is not a lot for a fight that was almost lost, but Chosen and Lyric were able to kind of stay alive in that archway, defend their support honor there, and let Boise State maintain a lot of space. Now Edgewood College has the barrage again, so Kel is hopefully looking to eat that. They've hopefully got an ult tracker on there.
2 minutes and 35 seconds, decent time to work with as well. Biggest thing to keep an eye out for is the combination of both back-end and the backside harassing Goblin, which is getting decent value, but also if they can draw enough attention away here and translocate, which they do, the Deadeye at this point is null and void. So they've forced that out, which again isn't the most high impact value ultimate, but it can cause moments like that where you force players away. And with Luke now transitioning towards that center position, there's the D-Mech as well. You got to keep an eye out for those rockets.
State being down to support, this might end up spelling doom for them as we kind of get into the fight. Kel knows they need to back up, get that health pack. James is just pushing forward as the back line of Edgewood College pushes forward into third point for Boise State. It looks like Boise State, they're not going to be able to set up for the touch. They're just going to let Edgewood College have that and set up for the touch.
Oh, little bit of mistiming. Kel was waiting for the dive to go in, but judged that, unfortunately, too lightly. And then you also lose the Transcendence from Lyric. This is just unfortunately falling to shambles right now for Boise State, and they need to regain bearings here because Edgewood is just going to continue to throttle like this.
Of course, he's going to get some value with the res of letting Edgewood College really stay in Boise State's spawn here. They've just got spawn courtyard that they're currently fighting in, eating a lot of spam from that high ground. Excuse me, but Goblin says absolutely not, and Mercy's res is off cooldown. She doesn't have any ability to do that. So you see Edgewood College have to back up, take another fight, and go around the corner. Falls just looking to see what push that they can get, but it might come at the cost of their life. No, they run away, just barely with a sliver of HP.
And you can see in that corner cam here on broadcast the amount of intense focus coming through by Boise State, realizing that they need to recover a lot here. Still 2 minutes. It's a worthy enough time defensively to work through. These couple of pickups are absolutely necessary. The translocate comes out again to force back in. But now we have to keep track of the ultimates. We have 2 support ultimates and soon to have 2 more in addition from Edgewood.
And we got to talk about the Pharah still running into double hit scan with a Mercy. That is a brave Pharah right there, and it looks like Chosen's going to go ahead and take out back in on that Sombra, which is going to give Boise State a couple of seconds of breathing room.
Kel playing this really off angle for the moment, again keeping distance and zoning a lot of this space, which is really necessary for Boise State. They can't allow this open area to be taken But with you can see Backen just maneuvering towards the right, attempting to generate towards this EMP, the win condition that is necessary. Great hack onto Kel for the moment, as you do see Bob thrown into the mix, which again, with that recent patch note, allows Bob to hyper-focus wherever Ash is dealing damage to, so that can give a lot more applied pressure, but the hack comes in by the counterpart, instantly making that Bob no longer valuable, but it's still going to be Backen going down by Goblin, who is consistently keeping a watchful eye.
Looks like Boise State maintaining control of this high ground with the assistance of Kel and that Mercy. It looks like we're going to go ahead and dive the enemy Pharah, and with those Ash shots in there, their Pharah is taken half. Luke is going to get out with just a, ooh, no, not quite. Right as I say, he gets out, he immediately gets sniped by Plato with the assistance of that D.Va. And Boise State is once again able to take that corner, take the space that they need, and Edgewood College is back to square one. And with only 46 seconds, they're swapping the Mei, they're swapping the Reinhardt. Edgewood College is adjusting their strategy, and Boise State hopefully has a pinky on that tab button to see what's up.
Yeah, they gave up the Rocket Barrage. Luke knew at this point, with the 40 seconds that were left, despite them having the ultimate, it wasn't going to yield value going into this double hit scan like you mentioned earlier. It's just too much pressure, and it's denying any accessibility onto this point. So hopefully with this Reinhardt and the Mei, the rush, the wall can separate and divide Boise State, where they can get these couple of really key picks. Nice hack onto Kel, who can't boost her away, left alone. Beautiful Bionade by Chosen to give some extra space and survivability. The remake comes in. I can't believe Boise State was able to peel their way out of that underneath the doorway. Edgewood had a beautiful opportunity, but unfortunately, it just vanishes in front of their eyes, and that's going to be Boise State able to deny another attempt and prevent this completion on the payload.
Make sure you thank Chosen for those nades. Boise State, they landed the first one, they landed the second one, and as soon as that Reinhardt was rotating, Kel was there just with some boosters in the back to take care of Jabobbers before he could get in on that point, and that is Boise State with a phenomenal 3rd-point hold. So
I can't believe that. Like, that was unreal. That
Oh, yeah, they
rightfully
couldn't touch
should
it.
not have been Boise State's.
Kel was definitely the bomb and then the baby D.Va in the enemy team, and then as soon as Reinhardt tries to touch and Lucio tries to touch with him, tries to speed him out, they're unable to do so, and then Kel just gets walled off in the corner but doesn't really care at that point because the rest of their team is kind of taking out anybody and everybody on point.
As we
That
take a swap
said,
of sides.
though, Edgewood
You
will
gotta
have-
think about the mental. You gotta think about the mental there. Like how you're feeling and being rattled by it.
Edgewood, I think, is definitely at least perhaps a little bit rattled there. You definitely hit the nail on the head. Boise State mentally got to be in a great place. They were able to win that fight when it wasn't looking too good for them in the beginning. And with that, we see the Reinhardt instead of the, or no, we do still see the D.Va on attack, running into the Reinhardt. Boise State, with their comp right now, they're running the same Pharah, and it doesn't look like, actually, they have the Cassidy and the Baptiste to kind of pressure the Pharah, but with that Mercy pocket, that Pharah has the potential to be just as oppressive as Edgewood's Pharah.
I like the Baptiste bringing that into the mix. They're going to stick with this Ryan May, which we only saw a very minor glimpse of it on the defense, or on the attack, correction. But now with the defense, it's how well Goblin's going to be able to get value on this, because realistically, the thing they got to watch out for is Backen on this Cassidy, and that's the only real threat that they need to keep an eye out for, unless there's some additional focus of damage by the Baptiste.
Yeah, and the Baptiste is going to have, it's going to cost something for the Baptiste to have to focus Goblin. It's going to cost the team a lot of healing on that Reinhardt. But with Chosen going down first, Boise State is really going to have a tough time in, and a double elimination on the back end, and James might be the end that they need, as Boise State is up 1, but still down their main healer, so it's just a Lyric running around with a Mercy Staff, seeing what they can do. And it looks like Mercy Staff is enough for Kel as he dives in on that Baptiste, takes him to half, just barely not able to get the finishing kill.
Yeah, I like the idea at the start coming out from Edgewood, but unfortunately, because they left themselves too exposed after the initial pick, it was much more challenging for them to recover, and they're basically just playing catch-up the entire time. Plato right now is on a tear with this Ash play, picking up literally everybody as it's stolen away by Chosen for the final take, and that's going to allow them to transition into the Streets phase. And what a great recovery, because it did look a little scary once again for Boise State stability-wise.
Plato was the push broom that wiped the enemy team off of the point, and we're going to see Plato go back to cart. Chosen's up, getting the nades, getting the value, and then we do see Boise State up around this second corner, challenging Edgewood for space right now. Hopefully they'll be able to scout out that Sombra top right. That's got to be gun for Chosen.
I'm really keeping an eye on how Cal's going to play this wrecking ball in the back. And at this point, just see if they can continue to draw attention away to work through this archway. You'll see this reposition. Blizzard, though, active and a shutdown. But Goblin comes in with a massive rocket barrage, laying down Justice onto 2. No way to get out of this. And with Lyric having the Mercy online, gets the res for a fall back here. Regroup of 5, and they look to keep pushing.
Plato doing the Lord's work, pushing on point there. We see Goblin going in on the enemy team with that Mercy pocket, seeing what value they can get. They just ate a face full of Echo Stickies, so they got to be a little bit passive here for a second as they kind of regain some HP. Walk back up to Catwalk there. Kel has just been unfortunately cornered in a room that he cannot get out of. And with that, we're going to see our aerial squad fly away, give up some space a little bit, go all the way back to point, and continue spamming.
Yeah, you can see in the kill feed it was a 1 versus 5, and much representation from Cal and what they're able to do, but that was just an unfortunate moment. What a sleep onto the Bob. That completely nullifies the value it brings into this, as you would have liked to see that in the backline causing harassment and drawing attention away. But Goblin and Boise State are just still getting so much out of this. A nano boost as a more desperate play onto the D.Va. Shut down, denied, and continues on.
So I think the D.Va, the nano boost was good. They went in, they got aggressive, but they didn't have the support to really back them up there. And what Boise State is really going to have to be cautious of this next fight is the EMP. 4% away. Back in is doubtless going to have that for this next engagement. Whether or not Edgewood is able to kind of touch this point, we're going to see what happens. It looks like they're setting up. It looks like they're committing. They do have the D.Va on the point, kind of contesting the ball as the first touch there. And Boise State is just trying to put damage on. We see the EMP come off, but not go onto too many members of Boise State. We see Kel get slept, Goblin get nano boosted. We see the second barrage come out. Justice rains down onto that Echo, proving Goblin is the superior bird in the sky. They're going to have to dodge the nerf on point, but is going to end up just kiting that successfully, and that Mercy is weak. Just got to hit her with a direct, and Goblin's going to go ahead and kind of clean up with Chosen winning the Battle of the Onyx.
Goblin was on the hunt and was able to find its prey. My goodness, just consistent force from Boise State to push back Edgewood. Now with 4 minutes to work with, the golden box of victory is just a stretch away. And as long as they continue to maintain this front position, they'll be in a good spot, even though there is some harassment by Backen.
Boise State's on the approach to the golden parking spot here as we see Kel eat a face full of stickies, have to back up a little bit, back up to cart, while the enemy D.Va is going to try to contest this point and immediately get punished with a lot of damage for it.
No.
That is a complete D-mech, and the baby D.Va's sure to follow after to a dynamite burn. Mercy is headshot. Will Plato be able to get the second shot? It looks like they're going to have to drop the commit. A risky play, looking for this Ana in the back line. Going to be able to set them on fire. No, not quite. That Mercy's taking a lot of Bob damage, and Plato's just going to shoot her right between her chicken wings there and take her down out of the sky. Plato falling back to their team, understandably. So pressured by the Ana and the D.Va. Now it's just kind of turned into an all-out brawl on point, with this Sombra taking more missiles to the face than she can stand. And immediately after that, baby D.Va made a valiant attempt on point, but ultimately I think that's almost it for Boise State as Tracer comes in. Is a last-minute hope for Edgewood here, but no, it's not going to buy them a ton of time, and Boise State is going to take that and kind of park in their rightful place.
Everything descended into chaos towards the end of that, unfortunately. Edgewood could not recover at all. And I mentioned about how Edgewood was the team to throttle in the previous slide swap. Boise State responded tenfold. Once they were able to break down that initial position and start working through the streets phase, and especially in Furnace, they did not give a moment of breathing. Just sheer and utter dominance. And have to give them major props to how that unfolds, because realistically at that point, every time the picks came through, and Plato rightfully just having a field day in the back, even if they did try and hyper-focus Plato, I don't even know how Plato got out of there at the end of that.
At the end of that, Plato, you saw the second of hesitation before Plato jumped down. Plato's like,
yeah,
This is, hold on, I'm calculating the risk to reward here, and jumps down, isn't able to set the Anna on fire, but is able to pressure her enough that she can't heal her team on point, and the rest of Boise State kind of cleaned up because the Anna was distracted. Plato didn't end up getting the elimination, but was able to get in, help his team eliminate, and then immediately get back out. So ultimately, the math wasn't
works.
exactly mathing for Edgewood there.
It still works. I mean, again, because you're in a state of chaos. When you had the D.Va come back out, there was coverage from Plato. At that point, it's either, all right, do I try and take the Plato? They look to get the distance, and then they're that much closer to completing. Or do I go back to the main fight and try and just deal with what's incoming and mitigate as much as I can with the defense matrix? It's a really tough challenge for Edgewood, but it's because of the amount of applied tension that was being forced onto them by Boise State in that desperate moment.
And it also definitely didn't help Edgewood that they were only able to get one member on the point at the same time because they were kind of staggered from last fight. And when you're just that last member just trying to draw out time, I mean, you got to either take somebody out before you go down as close to your spawn as you were. And unfortunately, they weren't able to do that. But going on to next map, Dorado, we just kind of clear slate, move on. Boise State is up 2, so this is match point. So what do you think is most important to them mentally?
I mean, at this point, they've got the world to play for right now, because realistically, even if they do lose this match, let's say hypothetically, the fact is that they get their map selection, which is going to play back to their strengths. So they're in a prime position. They've already been able to put insult to injury and show that they can outmatch Edgewood. But at this point, it's really all up to how they're going to be able to control this tempo, because Boise State, despite it looking a little bit rough for the initial engagement and the initial attack that came through, Boise State was able to match it and uplift it, as I said earlier. So there's no need for concern right now to Boise State as long as they continue to play their game and understand their win condition.
And I would say the big thing with Edgewood is grouping up, not taking Boise State one-on-one or two-on-one or something like that, because so far Boise State has just been able to kind of like lead them into believing they're taking a one-on-one, but the other members of Boise State come to help, and it's really just not fair to expect yourself to win the 3v1. So just be very careful of that kind of baity tactic that Boise State is using to kind of catch Edgewood off guard.
Well, and we're in this interesting state as well as the meta continues to develop, getting closer to, Pro-Am, Owl, and all of these other ones that I've touched on before, because there's this understanding of coordinated play with either, like, let's say, like a 2-3 breakdown or like a 4-1, and seeing how that's going to work, especially when you have individuals like Kel and Matt Merck and the proficiency that they have in these very mobile characters, and what type of synergy that's going to look like. And it seems a little bit lacking by Edgewood. They're going to have to really start to figure out how they want to go into this, because the D.Va is a great selection when you want to talk about trying to create peel and support the back line. You want to be able to have that opportunity of keeping them alive and denying the dive. But because it's more of this interesting like pseudo dive or like partial dive where it comes out from Kel, you've got this pharmacy composition which is still able to yield a lot of value, being really uncontested, not a hard focus on hit scan, and if it is, it's just not being able to land the shots. There's so many moving components to this. And as we enter into this next one, the big factor here is we talk a lot about the elevated positioning. This is where I see a lot of Ashe, where I see a lot of Winston, where I see a lot of, just even Hanzo in some respects, where they can utilize these catwalks and these balconies to their advantage. And I'm keeping a very, very close eye on how that's going to play out. As you can see in the distance, specifically, the Winston has been brought into the mix here, and I wouldn't be surprised to see this lend and lean more into what we've seen recently in upper competitive.
And we do see the Kiriko, which seems to be kind of a mainstay, especially with that Lucio. Boise State is definitely playing the hunt them down composition, as it looks like Monkey's immediately going to dive onto that Ana, and it is Lyric that gets credited with the kill. Actually, Edgewood has a little bit of life in them. They're going to go ahead and take out the Tracer, still at a disadvantage, but with their spawn so close, Edgewood will be able to kind of try to take this fight before Boise State is back to full strength, especially as Bagel goes down and is now respawning. Matt Merck is now respawning. We see Lyric and the Monkey kind of heading out, waiting to regroup with Tracer and Lucy.
And this is where we see Boise State previously like to swap up the roles. We have Kel specifically on tank. Matt Merck has been coming in on this Sombra play, deviating away from more so of that tank type of methodology. But the real thing is, understanding this type of tempo control to work alongside not only Plato, but Cal, because they're such a prolific ball player. They know how to work their angles, they know how to maneuver into these flanking positions to find value, but with that combination, it's either you take the ground game or you try and somehow focus down Luke on this Pharah. And Mattmerk has been doing a hell of a job to do it, but just can't find the execution and deny them this consistent damage that they're putting out.
And it looks like on that Pharah is going to be taken down to 3 bars before Kel's jump is up, and he's forced to kind of fall back to point. Plato once again going to go down on that Tracer to that Ana. We see Mattmerk looking for a sneaky hack on the back line, going to get it onto Ana, going to get the elimination onto the Pharah. James is just kind of out of this at this point, trying to run away from the monkey, pulls out the gun as a last resort. And that's a sad story. Every Mercy's been there. And it looks like Boise State just hunting down the D.Va, and with a hack, it looks like that D.Va's just going to become more ult charge in Boise State's banks.
That was really clean on the engagement. The Kitsune Rush allows them to have the extra value brought to the engagement. You had Kel along with Mattmerk hyper-focused down Luke, especially when the Rocket Barrage was active, even though it does get 1. Everything plays out nicely, and now you still have a decent ultimate bank to work with, since really the only thing that you've put into that previous fight was Lyric's Kitsune Rush.
And Lyric is already 22 and counting to another one, so Lyric's definitely got a good uptime on keeping that ult up. Now Boise State really needs to be watching for this EMP, but Boise State is going to use their own EMP before back end is going to use theirs. And so Boise State is currently down 1, down to support, hurting a little bit for healing right now, but Edgewood College is just doing the same thing right now because they just have the Mercy. And with that Valk, they will be able to kind of stabilize and force Boise State a little bit back, but Plato is there contesting the point as the rest of their team kind of tries to group up. We see the Sombra, now it's their turn to put the toe on the point, still can't touch that Mercy in the sky, so, and Sariel has respawned as the Ana, so it looks like Boise State is going to get knocked off of this point as the anti and the hat comes out.
I see what Mattmerk was trying to do with Kel to eliminate the support, but the problem was that because it took too long to finally get in a position for the EMP onto Sariel, that there was already 2 dead on the front, and Luke was basically left to do what they wanted. So now they have to just work from their front to back in that sense and can't really gain their bearings. And if Luke continues to get picks like this, either onto Plato or to Lyric, this is going to be extremely challenging to try and counteract this, and it will be a decent time bank for completion.
Can't believe that Mercy lives, gets hacked, flies in, and Monkey is unable to get them. Thank your Ana there, James. They saved you there, which, as a good Ana always should. And Boise State is going to have to give up a little bit of space here. Can't be in as deep as we would like, as we're kind of waiting for Kel to get back to the fight. Bagel says, I can be as deep in as I want because I'm one of the most mobile Euros in the game, and I can immediately get back. Edgewood College slowly but surely is pushing this cart. Mattmerk is just hunting for this Ana.
Yep, needs to get rid of it. There's the dive. I like it. They get it again. Unfortunately, they've lost Plato in the exchange, which doesn't give any more applied pressure onto Luke. James extremely low again. Finally goes down by Mattmerk, getting that extra chip damage necessary. So this will stem the bleeding for now at 2 minutes and 30, while the cart continues to be harassed by the D.Va play.
Boise State won the fight, and now at this point, they're kind of going in to stop the cart push. They drove the D.Va off, and now they've Edgewood College has a good push all the way up to that arch, but it's going to be relatively difficult for them to get all the way back there. We see the bubble over the bomb, and then we see Plato playing high ground on that soldier, but the Nano's going to keep that Pharah alive. Beat comes in, kind of saves some of the team members. Mattmerk is going to once again get that elimination onto that Ana. That Ana's got to be having a bad time. That Sombra is just on them this whole game, and it looks like Boise State is going to clean up. Bagel is the price we kind of see here, but Kel's playing the touch the spawn door challenge. So ultimately, Boise State's feeling pretty good about that fight.
Yeah, they're really trying to tilt Sariel right now. That's been the consistent focus every time, and Mattmerk has just consistently been communicating with Kel to get this, and they want to do it again. Detection, though, could be sought out. Just waiting for them to come out into the open as they attempt to detect. A little bit of separation from the team. Edgewood is losing valuable time on this. There's the dive again. And Boise State able to get the better end of this exchange, which is necessary. I would be interested to see if you're going to see Edgewood opt to change this up, because Sariel now is going to have a real hard time getting back into this, but they're still going to reside on it.
Luke played an amazing game of peekaboo with the visor and was able to clean up Soldier, but immediately after that, Kel cleaned them up. So I just gotta say, Pharah, I see you, I acknowledge you, good job. Sitting on that barrage, though, Boise State is looking to not fall to that. They're definitely playing split right now, so the Pharah's kind of got to pick who they got to go after here, and it looks like right now, kind of laying down some detection suppressive fire onto this Sombra. They will be unable to find them as Matt Merck is just going to hack the baby, immediately take them out, and that's going to gain Boise State a couple extra seconds of defensive time as the barrage is committed. They commit to the fight. Oh no, that is Kel and Matt Merck down, and Bagel all down to Luke with the Mercy combo there. That's Boise State down 3. The remaining 2 members, Plato and Lyric, have just got to fall back and see what else. Kind of try to group up, see if we can get a last-minute touch here, but they're walking into EMP, which is dangerous.
Oh my, great Suzu. But that's a quad EMP right now. A counter EMP only onto 1. And even just talking about that previous fight going into this, you're going to see Boise State be able to recover from the moment because Matt Merck's hitting a significant amount of value with these hacks as the seconds look to dwindle. 2 meters to go. That last 1.42 meters is going to vanish in front of Edgewood. And even though there was a beautiful understanding of timing, Luke gets that triple kill because they've seen time and time again the dive come through by Matt Merck and Kel to be able to shut down the support. They wait for them to go for the dive, they get the pickup onto it, and they get that extra distance. They don't get completion here, which is still okay, but they at least guarantee another 20 to 30 meters on the board for them to feel much more confident when they take the swamp of sides.
They waited to show their cards, knew that knew that the baby diva was going to kind of be the sacrifice, but to get the triple kill immediately after that, that is a price well paid, and gained them the extra meters. Was not quite enough to get them all the way to point, even though they had a massive EMP. Now we just watch this replay as Boise State is cleaning up on the point. After losing the battle of the EMP, they won the battle of overall damage, which stopped Edgewood from being able to cap that point.
And it's the final moment right now. Edgewood in a position of where they are not going to guarantee that playoff spot. Boise State just a moment away from doing so as we take the swamp of sides. Again, that golden box of victory, the mark of playoffs set for Boise State. Curious to see what Edgewood's going to do on this defense to be able to negate that and hopefully bring this into another map.
So we kind of see as we're going in, it looks like Boise State is going to run the monkey again. And I mean, why wouldn't they? They definitely had a lot of success on the dive. What we see differently here is the Zenyatta, should they choose to go on that. And that Discord target is just going to have a tilting time. I think adding the Discord to the Sombra monkey dive is just, that person is going to get instantly vaporized as soon as Boise State decides to dive.
The big question is Edgewood going to retaliate and try and get the first pick? Because Zen does not have the best peel. It's going to rely a lot onto Lyric to make sure that they do have those sleep darts ready, the Bionades to get topped up and healing, and also get potentially the purple on the opponent that goes in for the aggression. So there is a chance for Edgewood, but they're still going to reside on this Pharah play, which I'm surprised that they're looking to do so. It has yielded value, and, well, as I say it, that's the value that they were looking to get, and they get it.
So, trade support for support. Boise State is still in this with a massive respawn advantage and the benefit of still having their main healer alive. James coming in clutch with that Mercy Res in the corridor. This is Edgewood College once again full strength, whereas Boise State got that Sombra weak, gonna have to back up a little bit. I would say we're still in this fight as Plato is gonna go down to Luke and Boise State is gonna be forced to kind of back up to Courtyard a little bit.
Yeah, a few shots through the archway, just managed to land on Plato. That res really gives Edgewood a lot more fighting power when it comes to this close spawn advantage from Boise State, and holding them in this archway and being able to play the angles with Luke on that Pharah is going to make this really challenging. Again, it's solely reliant on Matt Merck coordinating with Kel to dive into the back.
We do see Kel diving into the back once again onto that Ana, having a miserable game there. They have purpled Matt Merck. Back in is going to be taken super weak as the Sombra, barely a sliver of HP left, as it looks like D.Va is also going to be taken weak. Now we're diving on the Mercy. The next target is the other support. No res, as James going to be sent back to the Abyss themselves here. Ooh, Bagel going to land the skill shot onto Luke on Pharah, and I think Boise State is going to get this all the way to Doorway. Now, the question is just whether or not Edgewood College will be able to make a desperate last-second touch.
It's too much of a high risk for them. If they go in for this and they get themselves picked up, that's just going to be more percentage gain, and then they're also going to lose the spawn advantage. So at this point, they're just going to look to hold back. They're going to keep up on high ground there. Definitely going to have Bobbers maintain that D.Va play up top with Luke close by to mitigate any sort of dive. But again, if there is a chance that Matt Merck and Kel can continue to stifle this support play, which they're doing once again. Oh, EMP!
Gonna committed onto that Anna. She
Bio
doesn't
nade,
live through the
though,
nade.
and dead.
Both supports down. Now Boise State is kind of running into the enemy team, leaving one on cart, taking all the space they can. They can see that golden parking lot. They just got to get the payload there. And it's moving slowly but surely as Boise State sets up for their next dive. And Edgewood College is in an uncomfortable position, but with 6 ultimates, they can definitely turn this around. They just have to anticipate the Boise State dive and be wary of the visor.
It's a combination of just utilizing their ultimates, but more so utilizing them effectively. They can't overcommit here because of how close this payload is. They're not able to anchor out towards that courtyard. Nano comes in. Luke is looking for the follow-up. Valkyrie committed. They've even contributed EMP. Everything is being thrown into this, and unfortunately, there's a flanking angle by Plato, and Kel gets the shutdown again on the support line.
Ooh, and with that, the barrage is also committed. Wow. All 5 ults and nothing to show for it as Boise State gets ever closer to victory. And this would, if Edgewood College gets the touch, Plato's going to get the elimination onto Sombra. This is going to put Boise State 3-0 if they can get there, if there's not something Edgewood College can do, as they're just kind of trying to put members on the point, get bodies on there to stall out time as long as they can. Soriel is going to go ahead and get Dove in the backline, tries to keep their tank up as long as they can. We see the Brig on point, a good swap, but it might be too little too late, as at that point you're just putting bodies on the point and trying to run down the timer. And it looks like Boise State is going to take that against Edgewood College 3-0.
Oh, that's a feels bad moment. You saw the Wrecking Ball try and rotate to the Mega underneath towards Bank, and unfortunately it's hacked by Matt Merck. Has to come back in, barely with an adaptive shield and maybe 45% health. So there's no assistance in continuing to contribute the contest on this one. A great shutdown by Bagel. Again, just all in all, Boise State really leveling up. This is why they've found themselves at now 7-0 consecutively and guaranteeing that they are finding themselves in the playoffs for this NACE Star League.
In this battle of undefeated champions, Boise State is going to reign supreme 3-0, and we couldn't have asked for a finer opponent because, I mean, it takes a lot to get in that undefeated position. But the Idaho Army National Guard is a proud supporter of Boise State esports. Top plays are presented by the Idaho Army National Guard, who invites you to take your impressive critical thinking skills into real time. With more than 10 jobs offering a $20,000 bonus and your degree of choice paid for, the Idaho Army National Guard is the best team out there. Reach out on Twitch at iGuard Gaming. So what final thoughts do you want to add to that discussion of NACE versus Edgewood?
I mean, at this point, props to Edgewood for attempting to try and come at them, but Boise State just really setting the tone start to finish here. And this is why they've only found themselves really dropping that one map over the course of these 7 rounds. They really, really do have a well-rounded understanding of this dive composition. Even the adjustment when it comes to roles. I talked about it specifically at the start of that, where Matt Merck is coming out on this Sombra. It's just this leading coordination of saying, this is who we're going to dive, this is our timing. And even though sometimes it didn't always work, because there's recovery where you have the frontal diva aggression to counteract it, when they're getting that pick and they're working from back to front, it is so effective and it is so toxic to try and work through. And then it just also really puts a lot of strain onto the opponent when your support play is consistently being sent back to spawn.
And we got to say, props to Sariel on the Ana. We see you. We've all been there, just falling victim to the Sombra monkey dive again and again. And we saw some valiant attempts by that Ana to stop one diver or the other. They would get the sleep dart or they would get the nade, but they couldn't get it onto both because they were being approached from 2 completely different sides. And Ana only has 2 abilities to defend herself. So props to you for running Ana just that entire time. And at least attempting to be what your team needed there against the dive. And then back to Matt Merck on the Sombra. I think Matt Merck is usually a prolific tank player for Boise State. And I think that tank mindset, bringing that to Sombra, Matt Merck knows what callouts the tank needs. He knows when to go in. He knows what to say to get the tank exactly where he wants them, when he wants them. And so the incredible synergy on the Monkey Sombra was just oppressive. And then we also saw Luke being very oppressive on this Pharah, but it looks like Plato will be our player of the game for kind of being the oppressive force. Well, one of the oppressive forces that Edgewood College was forced to reckon with here. And the ICCU player of the game is brought to you by Idaho Central Credit Union, who believes a great player makes a team more successful, just like Idaho Central's helping members achieve financial success. Plato is the Idaho Central Credit Union player of the game. And this is the calculated Ash flank. This is when they go in on the Ana. You saw them stop to pause a little bit. Lots of bob damage on the Mercy. Shoots her immediately after that and is able to take her down. And that enables Boise State to cap that point because a Valkyrie Mercy is nothing to sneeze at, and Plato took that out of the game. And then once again, we see James with the Valk, but we see Plato coming in with the Visor, able to get the elimination onto the enemy tank, able to get Sariel weak, and then immediately after that, we see Bagel just click heads with the rest of the cleanup.
Yeah, well-rounded, as we've said, and at this point, well-deserved for going into that playoff spot. And curious to see how the rest of all the regions convening towards this playoff tournament bracket is going to be an exciting one in the future.
What's most important for both of these teams to take into the playoffs as we move on from our group stage?
I mean, the fact that, because realistically, they're still, for that, I believe it's the last chance qualifier that you're going to have to see Edgewood look to try and play through and see what they can do to manage to get into this playoff spot. So that's just a lot of, my biggest thing would almost be understanding how that dive's happening, because Serial on every occasion didn't have the coverage from the Diva. That was something that was not there. And that's what the Diva really brings with the Defense Matrix, with eating, any sort of incoming damage. There was, I think, too much of a separation between the two that they weren't understanding that tempo of how the dive was coming through by Boise State. And when it comes, at least for Boise State, keep up those timings, refine them a little bit more. And if you continue to see Matt Merck understand the play with the tank as they have on this DPS role, whenever they do need Matt Merck to try and play it, it works well.
And with that, we are going to close out with our top 5, and our top 5 plays are presented by the Idaho Army National Guard, who invites you to take your impressive critical thinking skills into real time. With more than 10 jobs offering a $20,000 bonus and your degree of choice paid for, the Idaho Army National Guard is the best team out there. From all of us here at Boise State, thank you for joining with us for Nace versus Edgewood, and we're looking to continue to carry this victory into the finals.
What's up, Maddox? Look at that. Hey, Mia, gifting 5 tier 1 subs. That's very cool. Thanks, Mia. It's a good group in here tonight, man. It's a feisty bunch. We like that. We like that. That was awesome. Thank you. Really cool. 6,500 people strong in here. Hi, I'm Dane Cook. I just came from Pilates a little while ago. I was in there with my fiance doing the Pilates moves. And I had this person next to me in Pilates. You ever get the person who doesn't know how to monitor their breathing properly, doesn't know how to breathe in a way that's conducive to other people on mats around you, and they do things like this? And you feel it against your back. And it was like, at one point, honestly, I was like, I'm just going to do the biggest inhale in the world and just like try to ricochet my breath off their mat, like right when they're in a downward dog position. And I think I accomplished it, because after that, the dude next to me stopped going, raw, and breathing hot fucking breath over on my Pilates system that I was expounding upon. Front page of Twitch, dude, front page of Twitch, this is how we do it, okay? This is how Dane Cook rolls these days, okay? We do the show, we're on the Perfectly Shattered tour, then we get home, we do a little gaming, and we throw it at Twitch, and we all make it a nice little fun fest for everybody. Mr. Anderson, thank you for coming through. Guys, anybody who wants to throw a sub, gift it to the community. Let's get everybody all razzle-dazzled up in here.
We're in the starlight now. We're in the starlight now. We're in the starlight now. you be doubting? So don't doubt in my head. Just say what should be said. We can sit and talk about something happening now, not just hollow vowels. But I just worry about it, about giving up. How can I go without it? The doubt will push you through.
welcome back to the Boise State Esports Arena. We have more Overwatch action for you, but we've transitioned into ABC from NACE. This will be ABC versus UTD. Boise State and UTD have a little bit of a history as some of the Titans in the ABC in their division. They're currently both 7-1. BSU with picking up a loss against Harrisburg, looking to try to pick up a win tonight against UTD. Their attitudes are casual, but their preparations have been anything but leading up to this moment. I'm your host, Colby Alloway, and joining me tonight is Richard Rich Rad Pontillo. So,
Yes, here again. Excited to be here.
surprise,
And see more
as we
ABC.
transition
I know,
into
right?
ABC, yeah. So what are you most excited about as we switch tournaments, getting to the final stage of the group stage?
I mean, again, it's more so just really keeping tabs on the way that they've been playing. We already got to see a little bit of it earlier today, early this evening, where it was more so Matt Merck going to reside on that tank role, whereas in the intermission match that we did have just moments ago, where Matt Merck looked to reside more so onto that Sombra play, dynamically changing some of the roles. Really curious to see what the roster is going to look like, specifically going into this consistently, and also how they just continue to stay extremely liquid to outmatch their opponent.
And just as a little bit of a reminder of the stakes for this event, both of these teams, both Boise State and UTD, have qualified for the playoffs. This is now for seeding. So this is to kind of see whose hero's journey as we approach the playoffs will be easier, who has fewer villains to face than earlier on.
Yeah, I mean, again, we've seen 64 teams come together and be fighting for the collegiate scene, and I'm really excited to see how this continues to unfold, because there's just so much to have with all the other Overwatch that's currently active. As we're going to talk a little bit more about the keys to game, though.
Boise State is going to have to keep these keys in mind if they want to beat UTD with the same record as them. Doc's keys to the game in Overwatch are to understand your comp/play style, focus on each fight, get good ult value, and the objective is greater than kills. And Doc's keys to the game are brought to us by Drop-In Gaming. Drop-In Gaming is the premier online platform for gamers who seek competition. Play your favorite games to win cash and prizes through free and paid entry matches and tournaments. Whether you are new to the scene or a seasoned veteran, Drop-In Gaming has the right games and competition for you. To begin your competitive gaming journey, sign up at dropingaming.com. So in addition to those keys, what are some of the basics that Boise State needs to be focusing on tonight if we want to pick up a win against UTD?
I mean, my most interesting thing is what UTD is going to bring to the table here, because we've seen what Boise State's been able to do, and they have a really coordinated dive. They know how to play these flanks, and I need to continue to see that go in the same direction as it has been. So it's more so going to be if they can continue to stay in the almost having the driver's seat, really, that they need to just have control of this, consistently putting UTD onto the back foot. But again, UTD is a team that we've seen competitively over the course of collegiate the last couple of years. They're very known and well renowned when it comes to the players that they've had, the rosters that they've brought to this, and understanding the meta and its development and having adaptability. So that's going to be the real key for me, at least.
So what are some of the counterplays to dive? Because dive is what we saw Boise State use to great effect earlier in the night.
I mean, it really depends on the methodology that you have behind you. Is it that you're going to try and have a dive v dive and mirror that potential play and see if you can gain value before your opponent, or you're going to look to have something that causes a little bit more prevention, like the Diva we talked a little bit about, where if this dive's going to come through, being able to mitigate and hold on long enough that you force out a lot of the cooldowns that are going to come out from Clear, that are from Matt Merck, and where they now cannot escape, that they find themselves vulnerable, where there is this cleanup. And it's being able to understand which type of matchup you want to take. Diva is, of course, the one that we look to go through. There's been some Doomfist integration where we've brought that a little bit into it, because it does have a lot of the crowd control, it has a lot of space gain, it has a lot of high mobility as well if necessary, and even just trying to counterplay as well with a Sombra onto, let's say, an engaging ball. So there's a number of different facets that you can take moving forward to counteract against this dive. It's just really what's going to be most effective for UTD to take it down, and then also if Boise State's whether or not able to outmatch it.
So it seems like the TLDR is peel for your support when they get dove, whatever that looks like. And with and with that, our first control point is going to be Lijiang.
Yeah, we're not going to see Antarctic Peninsula like we saw earlier. We're going to deviate away from that and go on to an alternative control map, which is good because Antarctic Peninsula is its own beast in and of itself. Just the architecture and the way that it plays. So we get to go to something a little bit more known from us historically, and this is one where we can still, of course, see a lot of the Rhine play. There's Mei that can be brought into the mix. You utilize that brawl tactic, you divide and conquer players from it, or even, as we've seen before, a unique play with the Wrecking Ball, where there are chances like as we could peer onto Night Market, where you can utilize those angles, take a lot of the high ground, capsulate onto that specific point, and cause a lot of defensive prowess. So really, depending upon where we go first, it'll be interesting to see how the compositions will unfold.
Lijiang has a couple of completely different playstyles as you transition from gardens to control center. Gardens very wide open. You can use a lot of verticality and things like that. Whereas control center, which is currently pictured, there's almost no verticality unless you're finally able to break onto the point. And even then, there are a couple of different high grounds to contest you. And getting all the way up to kind of where you have that verticality, it's all going to be trying to brawl, trying to get in. We don't see a whole lot of monkeys run on control point, but you might see it Garden or Night Market.
It's just because it has that ability to gain entry onto a point. You're looking to take space. And from the verticality aspect, like you mentioned, there was some play with Pharah, which was surprising. Again, not really as prevalent. We saw we saw LBBD in Pro-Am really be the only person to bring that out most recently, and the value that it brought, which can, again, when you're playing your own type of game and you're playing to those strengths, it can work and it can really allow your opponent to be caught off guard. But more often than not, we've seen a number of individuals be able to counteract against the Pharah game, whether or not you want to take it directly onto the ground game, or if you hyper focus the Pharah to just alleviate that tension that they can bring to the actual match itself.
And Lijiang Gardens is interesting because while there is a lot of open sky and verticality, there's also not a whole lot of rooftops to kind of hide behind like you have on King's Row or something like that. There are some maps where you can force the Pharah even if you're running into double hit scan, because you can just play rooftops better and get on top of them before they're able to take you out. Ruins is another one of those kind of complicated maps where you can use the architecture to kind of hide and get all the way up into close range with the snipers and be able to take them out. But you can't really do that as well in Gardens because it's all open sky.
Yeah, there's a lot of open space that you can really work with, but that's also viable for more punishment. So, like, it's really just dependent upon how they play it, especially if you maneuver through White Room, where you're trying to see if you can potentially get some decent rockets if they play out forward. But not really talking too much further about Gardens, we're going to hop into Center, and that's where we look to enter in onto first, as we do have the lineup, the roster that's playing today, and the roles that they're going to be residing on. And we will be going back to that tried and true as we had earlier at the start of the broadcast.
We have chosen in, likely on support there, and then Goblin Plato are likely going to be our DPS with Matt Merck on tank. Boise State is looking to be super aggressive to go right in there. You see a Reinhardt in the red, so it looks like at least somebody's going Brawl. It looks like there's Baptiste as well, which gives a lot of utility to that Reinhardt for Immortality Field. Between Shield, Field, and Baps, just raw healing output. Looks like that team in the red has a lot of survivability, and it looks like Boise State is going to be running a pseudo-mirror comp. The difference is the Mei versus the Bastion. We're going to see which DPS gets more value here. As Boise State just a straight point, and it looks like both teams are kind of poking each other. It looks like one Reinhardt backs off, the other one immediately moves in. We see the charge, and I believe this is the true beginning of the fight, as the Mei's going to go ahead and wall off one side. Both Reinhardts are taken to a half HP, but Matt Merck will win the Battle of the Rhines with the help of his Bastion. That Mei is a single HP bar, going to get stuck, going to get taken out. That is Boise State now up 3, as Matt Merck is going to get the second elimination. You can see in the bottom right-hand corner, they're just the calm, collected focus as they clean up the UTD.
Yeah, Plato coming out on this Bastion is an interesting selection. I commented about it when it came to Antarctic Peninsula, but we've seen it be a lot more reasonable to take onto other control maps. If you continue to play this type of brawl, it's able to break down the Mei wall very effectively. It denies that division that can come through in narrow choke points and allow you to not be so controlled in your angles of being taken advantage of.
And it looks like as we kind of get into this next fight, the wall's going to go down to try to kind of circumvent the amplification matrix, but Bastion is immediately just going to destroy that. A single body shot, and then the stick forces out the Immortality Field. That BAP is down his utility. His Immortality Field is going to go down a counter amplification matrix. Since Matt Merck kind of backing off the point, the counter wall, splitting clear off from the rest of their team a little bit. Cassidy in closet, Boise State. Plato's got eyes on him, is immediately going to transform, turn that corner, and put a lot of damage onto this enemy Reinhardt on the team, forcing out the Ice Wall, going to get stuck. It looks like Boise State is down 1 right now, but has the advantage because they still have their tank online. Bagel is going to go down as well, and at this point, Boise State is just waiting for UTD to approach them on the point. How did they miss that pin? The Mei touched his shoulder.
Just barely. The Earthshatter is going to be committed here, coming out by Matt Merck again, playing not so much the heavy mobility that we typically see, but still being able to play dominantly. And despite the attempt from UTD, they're unable to persuade this finally in their favor. And this is still Boise State claiming it.
Boise State is currently winning King of the Hill. They were down and forced UTD to come to them and committed their Earthshatter, was able to kind of even get the elimination on the Lucio, but Boise State just played to their win comp. Come to you, big scary Hammerman. And then we're going to see the Bastion ultimate kind of just lay out in that hallway. Down Baptiste, that's not looking too good for UTD. And with 87% and climbing, they can't afford to lose this fight as they're going to clean wipe and look for their next approach. Boise State's got to be looking out for that Blizzard, but with Sound Barrier, I believe Bagel is the key to Boise State's success right now.
Yeah, this is going to be desperate to even touch. They're going to have a hell of a time getting there and don't manage to do so. That's round one in favor of Boise State very dominantly. And the biggest thing is just anchoring on that previous fight where UTD was so close in being able to swap it back, but unfortunately just couldn't manage to gain their bearings for the tail end of it, allowing Matt Merck to continue to play a little bit more offensively, have this Earthshatter that's going to get the denial onto their counterpart, denying any pressure coming in from Derpy. So well-rounded play so far on this city center. As now we're going to enter into our next round, which is going to be, I believe it was Gardens. I could be mistaken. No, it's going to be Night Market that we've got, and seeing how differently the composition might look or sticking onto the same thing. I wouldn't be surprised, though, with Matt Merck that we see that Wrecking Ball.
Matt Merck, there's definitely lots of boot potential, and especially with the kind of open courtyard outside of the point, right? Wrecking Ball is definitely valid, but so is Reinhardt, as long as you play the point and play to your win condition. And it looks like Boise State is running once again that Reinhardt, that Bastion, a deadly combo. Hammerman just puts up the shield, and Bastion shoots straight through it. All the bullets that UTD can't handle. And it looks like UTD is on point first. Down there, Lucio, though. Matt Merck is going to be walled. They're going to be forced to break mid as Matt Merck kind of charges in, just hits the wall immediately. Clear gets the double kill, but gets stuck themselves. Clear, that's a salute to you in the chat. I think you're going to go ahead and cinch this fight for Boise State here, as both Reinhardts kind of counterpin each other, and Boise State maintaining full possession of the point.
Yeah, Clear just doing work. We saw that earlier on the Tracer, and still being able to do the same on this Cassidy. Just getting really, really great sight lines, finding the picks that are necessary. There wasn't enough really to block it with the May Wall or even the Immortality Field to deny it. They came out super early in their cooldown rotation, so with Boise State taking this first, you can see the Chosen continues to maintain this high ground, and look as the rest of the squad continues to move in from UTD.
Maywall is going to be committed and immediately broken. We also get to see the Cassidy sticking immediately after that. Cassidy and Baptiste are going to go down. UTD's got to keep this Baptiste alive. Their Lucio's going to go down as well. That is no support, and Boise State at this point is just kind of cleaning up. Somebody get the mop and bucket.
I'm more now looking to see how they're going to be able to generate these last couple of ultimates so that they can try and gain the value. Abdallah with this amplification matrix is going to be key to make sure that they have a straight sight line down to a lot of this and potentially getting a pick with this. And you can see even Petal trying to take an off angle to counteract what Clear's been able to do on their Cassidy. Nice tumble again to mitigate that fire strike and also reduce the damage by 50% during the tumble animation. Really understanding the mechanic of that. With the Deadeye available, though, this is going to be a little bit more challenging as the Ant Matrix does come out.
Ooh, big shatter. Memberg is unable to block it, and that might spell doom for their team as Boise State is now down 4. That's a fatty shatty, and UTD is going to be rewarded with a point.
Easy take, but 69% gain. Nothing to scoff at, as they will look to come in back with now 4 ultimates to their name, because Chosen was the only one that really contributed into that. They did have an Earthshatter and also the Amplification Matrix from UTD, so there is a plethora to use by Boise State as they lead in first with Plato, and even the Deadeye from Clear.
Ooh, and we see the Immortality Field and the Baptiste are immediately going to get taken out. Man, UTD feels like they're playing this game down. There's some main heals here, and it looks like Plato's going to kind of find the way onto point. Matt Merck just get frozen on point with absolutely no fears. Boise State flips at 71 and climbing to 27. UTD feeling uncomfortable as they try to approach this point, but they need to just approach it with clear heads, with the knowledge that they almost have Sound Barrier online, and they got to find a way to break Boise State's defense, because this is probably going to be their last fight.
And that was such a challenge for Derpy, because the shield was mitigating the frontal damage with the Deadeye, and any other things that are pushed in couldn't manage to swivel the shield up to deny the rockets coming in from overhead. Now as we look into this again, the Deadeye looks to lead in from Petal, gets flashbanged out of it, magnetic grenaded to counter, and also taken down. There is the Sound Barrier still being held onto for Bagel, though. Didn't want to contribute into this since it didn't feel like it was that favorable, and Boise State's going to just give this up for free for now to look for a recontest that's a lot more viable to them.
Baptiste just rotated a little bit too slowly, and that gives Boise State their in, especially now as they have Matt Merck back. Both beats are going to be committed. All these teams have oodles and oodles of overshield here, as it's not going to be enough to save May there. We see the amplification matrix, the roll and the shot through. Chosen's going to get the headshot onto Cassidy, showing who's the real DPS here, and Boise State's going to take that 99, now 100 to 47.
Yeah, able to get this first map, and again, since this is the ABC, we do have this, a best of 3. So they put themselves on a match point. And after control like that is very dominant, you will look to most likely, wouldn't be surprised, see Kings Row. But, I mean, hey, to each their own. We could deviate away from it, but from what we saw earlier, I'm still really, really looking forward to seeing how the tempo control is going to be by Boise State and how UTD is going to be able to counteract this. Because, again, it just always seemed that the ball is in Boise State's court, and they are really being able to overwhelm their opponent and never allow them to have a solid footing.
I think the biggest thing working for Boise State right now is they're getting more value out of the Baptiste. Chosen is routinely the last one picked, if not one of the last ones, and is able to get consistent immortality field value as well as healing and damage in, and Boise State is just kind of winning the battle of the Baps right now in terms of pure value there. And then we see kind of similar value coming from both of the Cassidys. They're each kind of popping off whenever it's important, just as teams kind of ebb and flow. And then I want to say both Reinhardts are putting in a lot of work for their respective teams, though Matt Merck has a little bit of an uphill climb if he wants to claim best shatter of this match.
Yeah. I mean, again, overall, well-rounded. It's really just about adaptability. And in this case, because it is only the first of 2, you have to be able to do that quickly and efficiently. And going into that second round of control, they kept the same composition. So there wasn't really anything that was awe-strikingly different, and it was unfortunate that UTD wasn't able to really gain a grasp of how to counteract it. And the other part of it too is Clear is just being able to land these shots. Like, it's really making it challenging, and it almost kind of ties back to what we saw a lot when it came to the Sojourn meta, when the Sojourn was in its prime, and just being able to get the really, really fast railgun generation, getting that initial pick, completely just taking the fight from the get-go. And it was moments like those that we almost kind of felt, and it was reminiscent of that, with Clear getting those takedowns right out the gate before immortality field can be contributed into this, before the Maywall can deny the damage. There's so many different factors to that just really continued to lead in Boise State's favor.
And Kings Row is definitely a contender for a map, but one that I would like to see is Eichenwald, and that actually might benefit the Reinhardt versus the Reinhardt play. That's one of those maps. Well, Kings Row is as well. So it seems like with these couple of maps, Reinhardt may or may not be the pick. We've also seen Boise State run the ball onto Kings Row, which is a completely different play style, but one that Boise State is very comfortable running.
I would prefer to see that if they do take them to it, because not to discredit what they've been able to play so far, it's just that the synergy between Clear and Matt Merck is really clean. It's being extremely well thought through, and they're able to execute on the target that they want to hyper focus, and there hasn't really been any sort of answer to it. Granted, it's a different team from what we saw earlier, but still nobody's been able to really crack that code.
It would be a challenge for UTD to be the one that finally, kind of cracks the Boise State dive code. And I think Boise State would be forced to adapt in a very quick fashion if their dive was suddenly countered, because so far they've had almost too much success with the synergy between tank and DPS on dive.
Yeah, and I mean, we're looking just to get that final confirmation to see, and then we'll gain the attacking and defending side. I wouldn't be surprised if we do see Boise State at least go onto the defense first. They've typically been more so to do that so that they can at least set the bar and knowing where they have to attain that position. Also, just their ability to instill a sense of fear to their opponent when they're looking to try and play, especially if we do go to Kings Row when it comes to the archway. Major holds have occurred there previously. It was a little more challenging in the game that we had earlier, but they were still able to recover once it became past Bookstore into Furnace, where they denied that completion. So again, another thing to really look to and see how they play their overall strategies and their micro play.
And with Eichenwald, one of the big hold points is the castle. So once you've capped point 1, you then have the almost as gargantuan barrier to your success of the castle. If the defending team is able to kind of take the high ground set up there with preferably hit scan, or if we saw the Bastion or the Cassidy again, both of them would benefit from being able to take in castle. And even Reinhardt can hold in that castle and kind of run around his enemies.
The difference when it at least comes to Eichenwald too is that middle segment just before the castle, because yes, there's still, that wind and bend, but a lot more open verticality, whereas there's a little bit more finite space when it comes to Kings Row. Like, you've got your couple of window ports, there's that little balcony area, and then you've got your also like upper level near where the mega pack is to the initial room as you look through the archway. But Eichenwald has a lot more just open space where you can try and maneuver between it. There's not really nearly as many elevated buildings or elevated structures that's going to deny that type of positioning, which also gives some different facets if you wanted to try and bring something different to that, or look to reside at the high ground to where you can put a lot more damage and pummel your opponent as they work through that initial gate before even getting to the castle.
It's like mini castle and then the big castle, right?
Right.
And mini castle gives you the high ground, whereas big castle is just brawl central.
Yeah. As we look to enter in onto it now, we're going to make sure that we do remind you all, though, of the keys to the game, which are really, really important because, honestly, Boise State knows them to the T at this point with how successful they've been, not only here in this Overwatch Collegiate Championship, but also what we've seen from Star League previously.
And Doc's keys to the game, just as a reminder, in Overwatch are to pummel your opponent, play what you're good at, instill fear, and the objective is greater than kills. Now, well, one of these things is the same as the original. The rest are kind of added bonuses, and Doc's keys to their game are, of course, brought to us by Drop-In Gaming. Drop-In Gaming is the premier online platform for gamers who seek competition. Play your favorite games to win cash and prizes through free and paid entry matches and tournaments. Whether you are new to the scene or a seasoned veteran, Drop-In Gaming has the right games and competition for you. To begin your competitive gaming journey, sign up at dropingaming.com. And I want to particularly highlight one of those new keys on Instill Fear. I think one of the foremost things that Boise State can do to instill fear in the enemy team is you got to win the first fight. That's the first key. You can't instill fear if you're out here losing.
Yeah, and it all really resides on how that dive works, because we saw it when it came to Serial on that Ana, where I guarantee you they're feeling that tension, like, consistently. Like, they're constantly being hammered and there is no call to assistance. Like, it's unfortunate that you have to say it that way. There wasn't the deep appeal, there wasn't a second support, whether it's with a Baptiste or whether it's with a Lucio or whether it's with anything to try and gain a boop or any mortality field or just influx of damage. When you're solely by yourself in situations like that, you feel vulnerable, you feel unsafe, and you are just waiting to understand that tempo and control, and it was just never there. And if that can be brought to this table, which again, we have confirmation now that we are going to Kings Row, then we're going to see the same type of dominance from Boise State. And with that game that was played earlier, hopefully UTD is able to break down some of the strategies and the timing that comes out from Boise so that they can finally gain value themselves.
And Kings Row is another one of those maps where you can successfully run the Reinhardt versus the Reinhardt, especially if you're running a Bastion. Bastion is very impactful on both attack and defense, especially on the first choke point. Just having that much, the amount of damage that Bastion brings to just that wall choke point. Either team could get value out of that if they choose to. Kings Row is also one of those maps where even if the Pharah is against a hit scan, there are enough rooftops for an intelligent Pharah to kind of hide behind and stop themselves from getting picked.
Yeah, it's one of those things where the Bastion has always been a unique selection ever since we saw it very predominantly when it came to Overwatch 1 by Northwood specifically. That was their tried and true. Granted, in Overwatch 2, because of the evolution of Bastion and the way that it plays, it doesn't anchor the same type of value, but it still has its methodology behind its decision-making and how you enter in onto this, especially if you still work with the Symmetra out the gate, where you try to elevate either behind the statue or if you're going to go up onto theater. There's a lot of different ways that you can play this as we do enter into map and finally get a small glimpse of what the defensive selection is going to look like and find out who opted to play that defense first.
Like with the Hanzo and the Ashe and the Junker Queen, Her Highness makes an appearance for the defending team. If this is Boise State, they've been known to kind of pull out the Junker Queen on occasion. Boise State is looking to run in, do damage, and leave. And hopefully, if they can get an elimination as soon as they run in, that would be the most beneficial for them. But they're going to have to be careful because there isn't really a shield to protect your team. Your only protection here is kind of killing the enemy before they can take you out.
Yeah, the big thing that the Junker Queen really brings to the table is almost like what we used to see a long time ago with the Zarya, is the damage profile. She can put out so much value. She's got the Rampage for the anti-heal. Boise State actually going to be on the attacking side, and it's going to be UTD on the defense here, opting to go for the Junker Queen, which is not yielding any value. And you can just see Boise State absolutely eradicate the defensive hold from UTD.
And what Boise State's trying to do with the Reinhardt versus the Junker Queen, especially with Lucio's on both teams, is Boise State is looking to rush that Junker Queen because Reinhardt does a comparable amount of damage to Junker Queen once he's able to get in her face. And as barring Rampage, Reinhardt will win that 1v1 9 times out of 10. As we see Junker Queen just kind of peeking this corner to try to get some value or some damage, but ultimately Boise State is going to push them hard in this archway, especially as Plato transforms, putting a lot of damage in. We see Matt Merck and Hanzo go down, as well as Derby. This is Boise State up one, still pushing, but they got to be cautious because the enemy tank is still up, and we don't have a big damage sponge.
Clear, getting a little burnt for the moment with the dynamite, and Coach Gun knocking it away, as you do have Plato pressing forward, being in the turret mode. And again, this is where it is just a avalanche worth of snow. Like, there is just so much weighing you down, and Boise State is going to yield so much space from this.
I also want to highlight the Baptiste versus the Kiriko, because while Kiriko does have the Suzu and the Cleanse and is able to kind of get you out of a sticky situation, Chosen with the Baptiste is able to do a comparable amount of healing and damage to a Kiriko. But his healing is entirely AoE. You don't have to kind of single target like you would with Kiriko's little pack of sticky notes there. We see Matt Merck lay out the enemy team, get set on fire for his efforts, but a well-based Immortality Field. Ooh, Matt Merck is just going to barely be inches ahead of that Immortality Field, and it looks like this is the push UTD has been waiting for, as Matt Merck is taken down, and Bagel is going to be forced to run away with Clear, bleeding and purple. That's always a scary feeling as we slowly see his health start to kind of go back in, but joke's on UTD because Boise State was able to push it, so respawns are immediately there.
Yeah, it was just great understanding of spacing from Matt Merck, knowing that they'll have enough with that aggressive play, the Earth Shatter deviating away to guarantee that they've got this checkpoint and now can get the close spawns for not only themselves, but also the rest that went down. Kitsune Rush is going to make this a lot more challenging, since Boise State's not opting to take a defensive retreat out of this and just weather the storm. They're playing around the payload beautifully, and unsurprisingly, UTD hasn't been able to capitalize on this. They find themselves lacking the ability to, even in the Kitsune Rush, be able to take a dominant aggression against Boise State.
And it looks like, and especially the High Noon, I definitely want to credit for that. It's really hard to run in as a squishy. It's really hard to take advantage of a Kitsune Rush if you don't have any shield, and if you know they're glaring down sights with you at High Noon. I mean, it's hard to kind of go in there and take the shot. Matt Merck is going to charge right onto that Sigma, and I'm sorry, buddy, that is a big Hammerman really up close, going to be forced to commit the Immortality Field just to keep that Sigma alive. Matt Merck is going to be taken to half, but has his faithful BAP immediately there. The barely misses the pin, cancels it just before latching onto that Tracer, and then we see the Reinhardt versus Sigma duel on the ground, and it looks like Sigma Suck is not going to be able to do anything for that hammer there. Sorry, buddy. It will be able to do things for Plato, putting damage in, but not, and then the shield is not going to come out. Matt Merck is going to get an amazing Shatter. Matt Merck is out here trying to retake the title of Shatter King right now on Reinhardt.
I mean, that was just a great timing, because you're getting everybody on the stairway. There's no way that they can get back to the payload. It was more of an insurance policy, even if they didn't get the kills onto it, even though they were going to at that point with how much they've had advantage-wise. It's still just denying contention on the point to gain them so much worth in time bank once we do tank the swap of sides here. So again, 4 minutes and 21 seconds on the bank generated by Boise State, now taking the swap of sides to play defensively, which again, we've notoriously seen them pick the defensive first to hold the line, but this time around they felt a little bit more overzealous and was able to prove a point by gaining more time than the initial default time that you have at the start.
And I highlighted the Baptiste value last map. I think the big value that Boise State is getting right now is tank value. I think Boise State is achieving leaps and bounds more on tank right now. I don't think the Junker Queen was able to do as much damage as she really wanted against Boise State. Boise State was just kind of able to sustain everything she put in. And then for the swap for Sigma on third point, at that point, Boise State just had way too much momentum, and Sigma just got snowballed to the face and kind of attached himself as he continued to roll down.
5,
The big thing is the Junker Queen didn't bring enough to persuade Matt Merck to play defensively. Like, that's the biggest thing. There was nothing denying Matt Merck from continuing to take this space. She was unable to match it blow for blow. And that's what's going to force UTD to take this adjustment. You're going to have Clear hidden in the corner. Petal actually gets an instant takedown. And the fact that you had Clear taking this really secluded, isolated angle for a surprise attack, they don't get that extra damage. And UTD, with the Bastion of their own, takes full advantage of this.
UTD is a completely different team now that they have the Reinhardt able to kind of protect the team on the approach and then immediately get swinging. And I think Boise State was also definitely hurt by the off angle being down there. Cassidy. We see Derpy going to push up a little bit, but ultimately it's going to be May. It looks like he's going to have to come back to that, or somebody's going to have to come back to that payload as Boise State is approaching Library Corner there, taking a lot of spam. It looks like Matt Merck is looking for his way in. Gonna get a little bit of shield poke, approach all the way to Archway, and then shield to transform Bastion. That is a lot of damage that UTD is just gonna have to avoid. The wall is unfortunately not gonna be able to split Matt Merck from his team, as Boise State is a full team into this. Enemy team commits Immortality Field first, and it's not enough to save the Reinhardt, and Boise State has their in, and they're mopping at the floor now at this point.
Yeah, they've been able to take the advantage towards this Archway, which is going to be so devastating. You're going to have to see UTD commit ultimates to try and break through the spawn doorway, allow themselves an opportunity to open up and contest against this. And with how the angles are going to be played here from Boise State, this is going to be multiple minutes off the clock. And if not multiple minutes, it's going to be a lot of resources from UTD to get out.
And it looks
they're
like
actually
going to
round the back side. They're
on
going to flank.
defense. I'm almost confused as to which team's which here. That is a transformed Bastion with an amplification matrix on both sides there. That Reinhardt can't push in, though they did get the shatter, and it looks like the amplification matrix Plato took advantage of is going to go ahead and get more value. Reinhardt is walled off. They're going to be forced to break one of those right-hand ones as May's going to go into Ice Block. She has no abilities to defend herself, and Boise State is currently unable to push her as the Blizzard is going to come out. No. It looks like Clear's going to go ahead and land that grenade onto May and take her out as Matt Merck goes down in the back line, taking away a lot of pushing power from Boise State.
I really do like the idea from UTD, though, to take that full rounded flanking angle. They've got the space to take it since you did have Boise State draw back, so their window to open through is massive. And due to that, and since they have the close spawn advantage, once they started to take down some of Boise State, this is why they can move that payload out. Moving towards this middle position, going to try and get some extra space as Boise did, since there's still 3 minutes and 45 seconds. They have a lot of time to work with, and they do at least have one ultimate, the support ultimate, online.
And it looks like teams are going to trade DPS for DPS. Derpy is just going to go ahead and punch Clear in the face there. Boise State undaunted in their approach. Matt Merck is swinging all the way on to payload. Going to get walled off. Got to get some support from their team. Going to get locked through. And with that elimination onto the enemy back piece, Boise State is now able to really kind of get in and crack the egg that is UTD right now as they're forced to run all the way back to Archway, giving up a lot of space.
Cracking the egg, and might even get a little bit of a scramble there. Now I'm hungry. With 3 minutes and 10 seconds still to go. Defensively, again, you do have the sound barrier, though, and Chosen also has been able to catch up to their amplification matrix as well. They've stuck close, so they can at least trade this. Clear going to look to peek, leading in with the Deadeye. Immortality Field wonderfully timed there to make sure that Matt Merck is not going to be overwhelmed. And again, those moments where Matt Merck is starting to be broken down in health, there is a huge assistance from the support line to keep him going. So they're still unable to gain the advantage onto Matt Merck. Clear has been picked up, so that gives another window of opportunity here for UTD as ultimates start to come flying at Boise State.
UTD got big ultimate value, particularly the Bastion bombs there coming in from the sky. Going to end up at least being a part of 3 different eliminations there. It looks like UTD is setting up to take the space, and Boise State maybe has a touch on this final point, but with 4 on cart, it's going to be close. Kind of get into the fight. Matt Merck on the approach. Wall comes out. Reinhardts are swinging on each other in the front line. We see a stick. We see the Blizzard come out against Boise State. Matt Merck frozen in the Immortality Field. They're unable to keep him up as Clear is going to go ahead and try to take down the enemy Ryan, but will be unable to do so because of that Immortality Field. We see Clear at 10 HP in a dream, taking that Bastion low. Chosen's going to go ahead and get the pick, but immediately go down themselves, and that is second point for UTD, and Boise State is into the final stage of their defense.
Everything weighs on that Blizzard. They didn't use that in the previous fight when a number was contributed into that, and that guarantees this checkpoint reach, and it's really, really important they keep that. So now they look to cycle once again. The support ultimates are coming online. You do have Plato forcing a retreat for the moment. They're going to walk into quite a bit of damage, but nobody picked up, so there's stability now with 2 minutes and 50 seconds for this final stretch.
And it looks like we see the Lucio kind of spamming Bagel around that corner. Bagel is behind in terms of ultimate percentage by about 30% here as the next approach comes up. Matt Merck has Shatter and is 40% away. Abdallah does not have Shatter. We see the wall committed. We see the Bastions turning into each other. We see the Shatter committed for
Big
Matt
Shatter.
Merck, and that will be the nail in the coffin for Boise State to win this round. The sound barrier is committed though, but is UTD really still in this as they kind of approach? We see the wall. This might be the end that they're looking for if they can corner Matt Merck and eliminate him here. And it looks like they're unable to do that as Plato's going to eliminate Derpy for their efforts. And hate to say it, but I think that was a little bit of a wasted ult there. As Boise
We'll see
State
how
hasn't had to
punishing
give
it's
up
gonna
any
be.
space.
Yeah, they've not had to give up any space. Now we're reaching that final 2-minute marker where you do have at least Petal going to come in with an ultimate. The Earth Shatter is available because Matt Merck has used it, so they know from UTD that it is available. Great stun to come in, though, denying it with the charge on the front side. Matt Merck gets the better end of that and once again forces back UTD. And we have a disconnection as well, I believe, here from UTD.
And it looks like with that, Boise State's just going to go ahead and send them to their spawn and get a little bit of a technical pause so we can kind of analyze the things we've seen so far. So far, Boise State is having a very strong third-point defense. We routinely see the wall come up, but immediately as soon as the wall is up, there is communication between the support lineup and the Reinhardt, letting the Reinhardt know which way they need to go and which way is safest. And usually an immortality field is committed immediately after the wall just to make sure that Matt Merck extra stays up.
And, you know, building even further on that, just like we talk about like tempo and control and timing. Timing right now for that disconnect is so rough for UTD, especially because we're on a first to two basis right now. That in this last dire moment, you're starting to generate towards that ultimate. You're going to lose that percentage now upon reconnection. And then you have to start playing to the strengths that you have currently holstered. And it's really not too many because they're just trying to regain from that previous fight where you know that there's already been the Earth Shadow that was committed. You'll at least have that up for them at the advantage. Matt Merck already closing the gap though because of it in that previous fight. So everything's starting to look really, really shaky for UTD and have to play basically perfect for the remaining portion of this once they do get reconnected after this tech pause.
So at this point, it's kind of a mental battle because also UTD going into this, they're less than Boise State's 4 minutes and 13 seconds, I believe. They're 2 minutes and dwindling as we kind of try to get back in after this tech pause. So if UTD is playing the mental game as well as much as they're playing Overwatch 2.
Yeah, it's hard. You really now have to just not allow this moment of, you know, silence in this sense. You know, you're just waiting to get back into the game. You're letting your fingers get cold. You're kind of chilling there hoping that your player gets back online to not have any further issues. There's a number of different things, but we've seen a lot of these colleges and a lot of these players go through experiences like this to not have them be rattled. It's just, again, it's a combination of where and when this is happening. It's all of those other factors and knowing that, you know, if this was, let's say, match 1, round 1, different story.
Yeah.
It's 2 minutes left in the home stretch of Kings Row where you have to gain completion for you to be able to take this into extra innings. And that's a very, very tall order.
And Boise State did a good thing unknowingly, of course, because you can never plan for a technical pause or a DC or anything like that. Boise State did a good thing attacking and getting all the way to third point, so already setting the bar. And we do have a couple of replays just to kind of fill this as we give our players some time to kind of take a break, do some jumping jacks, maybe even touch some grass.
That's I would think that's kind of a sprint though, isn't it? From the arena, you're gonna run out and be just like, I'm gonna touch the grass, I'm gonna run back.
I'm gonna touch
You'll
the
have to, like,
grass, I'm gonna
tracer
run back,
blink.
it's worth it. Get a little bit of cardio in there. We see Matt Merck immediately shredding through that Junker Queen, committing regicide. This is Boise State's relatively easy first point take here. And then we see the Bastion ult committed. We see Petal set Matt Merck on fire, but Matt Merck, unfortunately for Boise State, is going to end up going down in no small part to Petal. And this is kind of UTD really pushing Boise State back for one of the first times on third point. They're saying, no, we're going to hold this. But Boise State ended up capping second. So UTD, what they gained was space on third. And then as we see Matt Merck kind of swinging the hammer. And at this point, the Sigma just let Hammerman get too close to him. And that suck isn't doing anything there against that big hammer. But it is doing things to mitigate the Bastion damage. Can't get the shield up to stop the shatter in time, and so that is cinching Boise State's attack.
Well, and the biggest thing about this, I mean, I know we're looking at now the reverse side where we do have Boise State on the defense, but calling back to the attack aspect of it, the Junker Queen was a really unique selection. I mean, it's not that it can't bring value, it's just they kept it for so long. Like after the initial hold on the choke point and losing that point, and then keeping it throughout Streets phase before Furnace. That's the part that was most surprising to me from UTT is I would have liked to see a type of adjustment because it really just wasn't matching against Matt Merck. And again, the damage profile and the benefit that she brings. We see a lot more of this Junker Queen when it comes to, let's say, a Wrecking Ball play or something that has high mobility. The Jagged Blade allows, upon escape to deny that, to bring them back into the fight. It keeps them vulnerable. It has, again, that Carnage, the Rampage, even when you do get that ultimate. There's a lot of things that you can bring to the table with it, but it just didn't seem like fully thought through in that sense. And it would have been better to maybe have either the Sigma come out sooner or a Reinhardt to match. So in this moment now, when they take the swap of sides, they opt to go for the Reinhardt. So it is going to be at least a mirror in that regards, but there's still just a lot of components and moving parts that I don't think that are moving most fluidly here for UTD to be able to outmatch Boise State.
And addressing the disconnect, we are going to go back into game, but there has been a full map reset. So Boise State took Lijiang, but Kings Row, Boise State has yet to attack. Boise State has yet to defend. So this is a full reset here. So we might see UTD kind of learn from the lack of value on the Junker Queen, and Boise State might have a more difficult time taking or defending this first point.
5, 4.
Because we do get another round, and we just deja vu moment start again with 4 minutes on the clock.
Lucio's holding on to his head right there, barely.
Yeah. Boise State gonna attempt with the Widow as per usual, and then go again with the start of the time bank all over.
Ooh, there's actually been a pretty significant player swap here. We have Derpy now on the Reinhardt and Abdullah on the Lucio here. Looks like Petal still on DPS with that Bastion, and then we have Boy on the Baptiste, and it looks like Boise State is just going to get cleanly wiped. This is a much different story than last Kings Row we saw.
And that's the interesting part of this, is when you do have something of this nature where it goes for a full map reset and you've been able to see what the opponent brings to the table, it gives you that chance to have a second life, and you're coming back into this revitalized knowing that you can counteract it. And this is why you don't see the Junker Queen. They're looking to match it head-to-head with the Reinhardt and the Bastion themselves. Mei being the only significant difference here. Petal gets the instant elimination onto 2 now, and once again deviates away with only 1 minute so far attempting into this, but that's the first of many more minutes that you're going to have defensively.
They've definitely adjusted their approach to the walls as well, because previously it was just an attempt to split Matt Merck from the team, but this time it's been to split DPS from the team, or to split the team in half, to split squishies so that the enemy team can kind of go in, hone in on those and take them out. And we see Derpy probably waiting for a sneaky shadow there. It looks like Matt Merck has found it, but is unable to block in time. We see the Immortality Field, both walls come up, kind of stopping the tanks from hitting each other in an L shape there. We see Matt Merck taken low and forcing to back off all the way in that corner. Boise State yet to find a way in against UTD's defenses.
Vastly different Petal now with their ultimate online, when they're going to finally unleash it onto Boise State. This transition is great, though. So Boise State does have positional advantage, and it's going to need a response around the hotel. Shatter from Matt Merck, not really landing to get anything in this until there is some retaliation. Clear gets a great takedown onto Petal, so that reduces a ton of incoming damage, and solely has to rely on this Blizzard. But with Bagel sticking distant, keeping space, allows the barrier to come out and keep everybody topped up. But I'm really surprised that Derpy is able to gain this much value.
And it's definitely in no small part due to the Baptiste, because lots of these Reinhardts are taking tons of damage right now, and Derpy just right now has the support of the Baptiste. It's Matt Merck looking at their Baptiste on high ground, trying to approach, kind of even things out a little bit. We see the Plato ultimate just straight onto that Bastion. Sound barrier is going to be committed, giving UTD permission to kind of go deep, go forward, and it looks like they do, and Derpy is the price with a well-placed Blizzard able to stop UTD's advance and maybe gain Boise State some space here, even though they're down both DPS and now a support.
Oh no!
Wow, UTD just pulling off the impossible turnaround here. As Petal's going to pick up eliminations onto both supports, and there's nobody left from Boise State.
The thing is, because the amplification matrix was still there, that you had a combination of Clear and Plato maneuvering in and out of it, where there was still damage amplification coming through from Petal and Cashier. So they were able to hold on to this. Great
Ooh,
stun as
big
well.
shatter.
This is going to be a deny for Boise State to even get to this position. They've gotten 2 ticks, so that is something. But this is looking a lot more challenging for them.
Much different than taking first point, first attack. We see Derpy not hiding for the shatter, but hiding for the charge into the enemy team. We see the Widowmaker clear says, get back behind cover or I'll take your head. And it looks like we see UTD kind of hiding in the hotel room before that Bastion ult. Derpy going to charge in with the wall, immediately eliminate Plato. Matt Merck answers the charge. Immortality Field comes down. To the benefit of Matt Merck, he will be unable to get the health back in time, and that is Derpy just kind of putting the hammer on them all as he proceeds to eviscerate Boise State's team, and at this point it's just a desperate attempt to even touch.
Yeah, the overtime's going to dwindle. Boise State now opting to go onto the Doomfist just to get back for contention, but there is no group of 5. There is no order to land onto this position as these kills continue to come through for UTD. They have a sound barrier and a blizzard to guarantee it, and now we do tank the swap of sides. Round 1 complete. This is vastly different than what we had. The only benefit here is that Boise State was able to at least gain 2 ticks plus for them to have something to their name, as this mountain is still a tall one. And this is that amplification matrix I was talking about. So, like, the Blizzard does land on 2, and they get the picks, but the fact of the matter is that this is still up. They get booped back by the Lucio play, so there is still a lot of damage to come through on this. And then they've got a flanking angle with Petal where nobody sees them coming from. So you still have to be very respectful of that amplification matrix, even if it is against a May.
Even if it is against May, the Lucio, and they tried to close the distance, but a well-placed Lucio move is going to keep all members alive and actually save that point for UTD here. Now, Boise State's defense has to be just as strong, and what this means, for the most part, is Matt Merck staying alive, able to get value, as well as the Bastion. Boise State is really looking to play Boise State is looking to play a perfect game. They don't have a ton of room to make mistakes. Two ticks and a little bit is not enough to fully reset and make it back to the point. They can't afford to fully reset at all, even with the Lucio.
I'm curious of how Boise State's going to adapt to play this. I don't think they're going to look to play more forward as we saw before, because I think it's too much of a risk, because 2 ticks can be very fast if you lose a player early. Though that's a little bit of a risky play with Clear playing that far forward, especially if they've got a Widow, which they didn't. Okay, so that's a surprising. UTD didn't look for an early pick, and that would have been probably a game over here to get that shutdown onto Clear. But this rotation, the wall is going to come active, denying positioning. But the Immortality Field's already been spent, and Boise has traded it out.
Trading DPS for DPS, but Boise State is at a massive respawn disadvantage. So Clear just kind of trying to play the containment game as the enemy tank is going to get in on Statue, and Boise State is forced to rotate all the way back to point and hotel. And it looks like Boise State is currently winning the ultimate game on most fronts, with the exception of... Actually, no. Boise State is currently winning the... with the exception of Bastion now, as Plato's going to go ahead and get some Bastion value. We see Matt Merck go down as well as Petal. Boise State needs a foot on this point here, and May's going to be the one that immediately go down there. Boise State just contesting for a tick here as Derpy is cleaning up on board.
Yeah, this is going to be UTD, because you had to go back to taxi the Bastion. Matt Merck lost the mobility from the Lucio, so that forces them to have to enter into this 3rd round. Again, with the full map reset like this, it changes the outcome here. So we do have a 1-to-1 map score for both these teams.
And this is completely different than the way Kings Row was looking before. So now it's Boise State that needs to do the mental reset, play the mental game, just kind of go back to next round as if Kings Row didn't happen, and we're 1-to-1, so we're 0 with a little bit of complications here.
They've got the benefit of picking the map selection, though. That's the biggest factor here. And the other aspect of it is, too, is because we did have the reset, it gave the opportunity for UTD to know how they wanted to change up their mechanics and also their composition to counteract against Boise State, which is why that was much more viable. You didn't see the Drunker Queen again because it was not yielding any return on that. So now that we're going to be entering into this 3rd map, there is an advantage for Boise State. They can play to their strengths. They don't have nearly as much of a read from UTD onto what they play, and they get that more surprise factor back.
And we also definitely have to say kudos to UTD for being like, all right, we weren't planning on the technical DC, but they learned from the first time they played Kings Row and immediately adjusted their strategy, and there was no more Drunker Queen that let Boise State kind of sweep the floor with their team. Instead, it was a Reinhardt answering Matt Merck blow for blow.
And with that, it's again one of those things where it's kind of the luck of the draw, and the fact that it's respected that the teams both came to an agreement to restart them, because that's another factor where sometimes that doesn't come to fruition, where it is just that you do have to either take the loss or you just go from the timeout. So that gives another lifeline here for UTD before we enter into that third map, which again, interested to see what the selection is going to be. Boise State can take their time to pick on something that is very formidable for them, and with now there being a lot more structure of this Reinhardt between the two of them, I'd like to see a map that does deviate away from that and go more so onto this Wrecking Ball to, again, catch UTD off guard, unless there is some type of knowledge of knowing that UTD can counteract against it, because they do have the Junker Queen, which is one of those small facets that can do that.
Junker Queen is pretty good at putting a lot of damage onto divers because you're already within kind of melee range of the Junker Queen if you've dove into their team. And she also has a lot of peel with Gracie on the knife to kind of pull divers off and get a lot of bleed damage in there as well. So Junker Queen, while maybe not necessarily as known as Diva for counter dive, Junker Queen does a serviceable job.
Well, especially if you bring a Cassidy into the mix, because ever since the adjustment and a lot of the tweaking that's gone on, that very close encounter damage profile is really, really helpful, especially if you have it alongside either the Diva or potentially a Reinhardt, or, slowing it down, following up when there's a Mei in the mix, which we did see from UTD. They opted to bring that into the equation. So if you can slow and keep targets close in that engagement, that gives a lot more value to the McCree or the Cassidy. And especially when we also look at the ultimate, that there is a combination of the reload from the tumble, the reload from the Deadeye. There's a lot of things that can just make you significantly put out damage, and having multiple fan the hammers can really break down anybody that gets close.
Bali, which I think could go either way on Wrecking Ball or Reinhardt. What are your thoughts?
Shambali is an interesting one because we've seen, again, a variety of different things. We've seen Sigmas on it. We've seen Wrecking Balls on it. We've seen Diva, even Doomfist, really. So this one is more so interesting because I don't know what to expect. I would like to see the Wrecking Ball for sure by Boise State, because even though the map itself, it's not really like you do have high ground, but as the map progresses, you're always elevating yourself. So like once you gain it, you lose multiple angles of high ground. It's only what is in front of you. So there's not like, let's say, on other maps where there's high ground that surrounds the specific S score, like Junkertown, for instance. Like as the payload is pushing, like you always have high ground angles from both points. Whereas when the payload is consistently moving, it's always ahead of you. It's always in front of you. But as we enter onto the map, we're going to see that it is the Wrecking Ball, and I guarantee you that's going to be Boise State, and I'm glad to see it.
Wrecking Ball versus the Reinhardt. Boise State trying to pull something unexpected here. As Clear is going to get a lot of damage onto this Reinhardt, who is unable to turn and is going to get punished for it, and the Immortality Field is committed, giving Boise State the in they really need to disrupt this enemy team. We see Clear and Matt Merck shooting the same targets, putting a lot of damage in, but so far no eliminations have come out. We see that Wrecking Ball in the backline getting slowed by the Mei, looking for their next way in. We see the knock, we see the pile drive. Is this going to be the end of Petal? Oh, not quite. Petal, be sure to thank your supports. You got saved by both of them at least twice. There's Boise State down one. Have to play a little bit more cautiously, and it looks like they're focusing on the map, but they're unable to get any eliminations just because of the sheer amount of healing UTD is putting out right now.
You got to give credit to Abdallah. Abdallah got two really great moves to deny Matt Merck entry on two separate occasions, and that's so much weighing on the support role. You said it earlier, keeping Petal alive was one thing, but also denying a lot of this dive and forward pressure has been significant until finally Clear can come out with the presence that we've seen them do before. They just have to, that was a close engagement. They almost got the Ajax onto Abdallah, but they're still alive, mind you.
Abdallah sure isn't anymore, as he's going to get punched by a little furry fist of rage as Matt Merck is on the health hunt, sipping for some of that HP. And then we see the mines on point. Boise State is going to be able to advance onto this next corner, and Matt Merck is trying to roll in and look for their next dive target. And it looks like Clear is not in with them, so Matt Merck is immediately going to get taken down because of that amplification matrix. And I think that might be the out for Boise State, even as Clear pumps damage into the back.
Yeah, the Amp Matrix is a big boon, and the fact that you also had Adaptive Shield used a little bit earlier in that engagement had it lose its maximum value during that. There is a swing And a wishful hope coming in from Derpy with that shatter. It does not yield value. That is a very aggressive play. And now with Plato pushing forward, had the overclock, just forcing back most of UTD. Has to be a little cautious here because they don't want to get outmaneuvered.
And it looks like Boise State is kind of going in on Derpy, who is half HP and currently split from their supports. Will Boise be able to attack him from more angles than he can defend? Yes, but the healing is going to come out. It will not be enough to save Derpy in the end, but it is enough to lure it clear, and Matt Burke into Petal and Cashier's traps.
Clear. That was just dashes into the snow globe and says, I really, really want this kill. And then is frozen in place, so it's back to the drawing board now for Boise State. But they do have at least Matt Merck with the minefield coming up. They can zone multiple players away. You can already see Matt Merck posturing towards that flanking angle to generate it for this last few meters, because they need to get this for the next checkpoint, because that moving up through caverns is really difficult as well.
Oh yeah, Caverns is one of the high ground spots on the game where it feels almost oppressive to kind of go in through here. So UTD, if they lose this fight, they definitely have another hold before on second point. It's the beginning of Caverns here. And then we see Plato kind of sending lots of damage onto Petal. We see Petal go down. We hear the call of Bastion in the chat, when then Plato's going to have to try to cha-cha slide away. Can't get out of there fast enough. Now UTD has the beat. They know they can run into Boise State and see what kind of damage they can do. Clear just staying barely out of Reinhardt's range in this scary dance with death.
These last 20 seconds are going to be really detrimental because you lost the minefield and the full spawn for like that one-shot potential. And Petal gets a random shot onto Clear. Oh, this is going to be really tough for the last 10 seconds.
And Derpy's so far in them, but they can't put more damage than that. Baptiste can heal right now as Matt Merck is going to go down. This might be the end of Boise State's attack as we see Bagel just trying to put some distance and get in for an overtime touch. We see the return of Clear. We see the return of Bagel. Plato will go down, but so will Cashier to Clear. Or to Chosen, excuse me. And that's what we need to do. We see the Kitsune Rush come down, letting Boise State do a lot of damage. We see that Tracer just being a pain, and Reinhardt's behind. Now shooting onto the Baptiste, unable to get more damage than Baptiste can out-heal, just being a nuisance and at least forcing them off of the point. With 105 HP, no recall, no blinks to their name, just seeing what they can do, stay in the tank with a pulse bomb. Clear's carrying on this point right now.
That was a very, very lucky turnaround there. Oh, I think they had UTD disconnect again here with another player, which is probably going to make it more challenging for them, as now they're going to look to try and take it with 2 minutes and 23 seconds to carry forward, and you have Clear pushing forward to already get the intel.
We did see a little bit of a disconnect from Cashier there, and players are getting fired up and excited in Arena. Boise State, they have the push. They kind of... It's a completely different play style trying to get through these caverns than it was there. And as you said before, you're continually advancing. UTD always has the high ground, and that's something that will be difficult for Boise State to approach.
Overclock available. Disruptor shot tossed into the back. Still having to work through this. The window is being managed at least by one so that they can't be outplaced. Going to be a slow, methodical flank by Clear. Does go down. Icicle finds them. And now pivoting around this corner, there's some nice disruption from Matt Merck, but this wall is going to make it a little bit more difficult to maneuver through.
And then we do see Petal go down to the Sojourn Railgun, and immediately after that, May is on them, but they're going to have to slide back, kind of get some support, rotate back to point, get some sticky notes taped to their face, courtesy of Kirko. And then we see Derpy just backing up on the Reinhardt, trying to protect their team. Abdullah just gets a little bit too far out of that shield and is almost punished for it. Now this is UTD's contest. The fight has begun in earnest. We see Plato at 87 charge, trying to do some damage, but they're walled off from getting maximum value right now. Clear desperately trying to charge a pulse bomb that could potentially turn this fight around. As they have it, they commit it. Will it get value? Not just yet, as UTD is still on this board.
Bagel's harassing on the outside. Needs to be super careful, though. Goes down. There is a hyper focus onto that to deny that Lucio from consistently being able to harass and gain utility for this team. UTD defensively now having Petal with the ultimate and soon to even have the Earth Shatter and Sound Barrier, but the Kitsune Rush come out in time as a Fire Strike clips Plato on entry and has the numbers advantage with 20 seconds to go and only needed one more meter.
And as you see, the Reinhardt Derby just still now defending this point. Boise State is looking for their next approach. Got to be wary of the Shatter. I will say Boise State has been playing split enough that Derpy will be unlikely to get it onto 3+ members. It looks like as
Attempt
Boise
to
State
go
is on
in
the approach.
quickly. Yeah, Mattmerk's trying to make sure that they get it into the overtime, but they are instantly shut down again. This is most likely where this cart will end, especially with a fortified sound barrier from Adala. And that will be very difficult for Boise State to come back into this. They just have to accept their defeat, but the fact that they were able to at least get almost to this next checkpoint is very viable for them to still be able to take this.
Caverns is an amazing defensive spot that now Boise State will get to take advantage of. So it's no shock that Shambali Monastery didn't go all the way to third point, because there are a lot of teams that get caught up on this cavern, that get caught up on the constant advance onto the enemy high ground here, that can't deal with that, especially with the Bastion, especially with the Reinhardt. Boise State is always looking for their way in with the dive, but UTD has a lot of safety and security in that Reinhardt, in that Baptiste, in that May. A lot of their comp is kind of hard for dive to break into.
It is. And the other aspect of this as well, when we take a look at it in the swap of sides, having the Wrecking Ball on the defense,
Ready for battle.
personally, I feel is a little bit better. It allows you to knock multiple members back in a lot of these choke points. And if we take, you know, a little bit of a glimpse and draw the camera back a little bit, this is a very difficult map to finish. Even when we looked at it from, I mean, I saw a lot of this in Pro-Am, and I think there was only one completion. I think it was one time there was a completion onto it. Everything else was either before first checkpoint or before second, as we just saw here in this game. So it's staying very consistent, but we are going to deviate away from the Wrecking Ball here. We're going to have Boise State bring out the Reinhardt instead to match it toe-to-toe.
5,
And I think that's a good swap on the side of
3,
Boise State here, trying to go the Ryan v. Ryan,
1.
and especially if they have the
Attackers
Bastion here. Both
incoming.
of these tanks are going to be looking to do a lot of damage here. And we have the May, so both teams are looking to kind of get the, whoever gets the battle wall wins, I think. See both Bastions transform, put a lot of damage in. It looks like both shields are weak as Clear is looking for their next in on the May. As the brawl just happening on this corner, Derpy is half HP. We see the wall committed. Derpy will get taken down in Immortality Field. Too late and too far. Going to give Boise State the in. Ooh, Mattmerk, right as we think they had the in. Mattmerk is going to unfortunately go down to the May, but Boise State is less in this as the May goes down as well, and Boise State is cleaned up, though Bagel is able to get Petal as a bit of a consolation. And that's only
and the
first
end of
fight
it,
loss.
It is. The thing is, though, is that was still a very convincing first 45 seconds, because the distance now that's covered, it was a little bit staggered, so it's going to guarantee that this payload gets to this next turning junction, and then also you're going to have Casher playing extremely far forward to at least get that intel of where they're going to come from.
It looks like they're doing their, Boise State's going to hold them on this corner, exactly where we planned, exactly where we thought they would, but immediately after that, Boise State is up to, excuse me, now up 5. Boise State just wiping the floor around this corner without having to commit any ultimates. Oh, with the amplification matrix, excuse me.
That being really the only one, though, which is reasonable. If you're only going to contribute something into it, you matched your opponent, so that's going to be an even trade out, and now you can play this a little bit closer positioning, as you can see, and try and catch them off guard. Actually, they're going to rush onto it. 2 comes in by Plato.
Now Boise State is once again up 3, kind of sending UTD packing, and Boise State will give up a little bit of space to go back to cart here. It seems like the purpose of that first push was just to bleed time, but where Boise State really wants to hold is in this kind of enclosed area around this corner, and they have the time to do it.
Now, Petal looking to get value of their own. Shatter is denied. Shield was up by Derpy, but there is a Blizzard that is going to lock down Plato, and Petal takes full advantage of it. This is where things get a little dicey. Clear did not manage to toss out the Blizzard. They're holding on to it so they can look to utilize that into the next fight, because they did get a few ultimates out of UTD, but there's still 2 online for them.
It does look like Boise State they're going to have to rush to get the touch, but this first point hold, Boise State will get the touch, and they will be approaching from the high ground here. We see the Bastion already with the high ground advantage, getting a little bit of damage in there and taking a lot in return. Mattmerk biding their time. They will drop with the wall, just immediately wall and split off of point. The Shatter comes out from Derpy, excuse me. We see the shield go, we see the wall go down, and immediately after that, Derpy, his BAP just can't keep him up. That is too much damage. staring them in the face, and then we see Boise State just trying to clean up and push them back around this corner.
That was a very clever shatter position by Derpy underneath, but unfortunately, I don't think they timed out or had much knowledge of how valuable the clear Blizzard was going to be. But now that you've lost that, you solely have to rely on this amplification matrix and also this artillery. Maybe going to have Matt Merck get that Earthshatter as well, but there's a lot on the line right now with this 40 seconds to go for UTD.
Looks like the amplification matrix is there. They do have the approach. Boise State is going to back up the corner wall to make sure they make the rotation safely. Chosen matching amplification matrix for amplification matrix here as both teams are going to commit it. And it looks like Plato's going to get more. Ooh, looks like Plato's going to get a lot of damage, but no eliminations as the enemy team just wisely goes around that corner. We're going to see what value we can get with the Bastion airstrike. It looks like Plato is going to go down as well as clear. Boise State is now just moving the fight to cart, but there's a transformed Bastion and just too much damage for Boise State to handle as Matt Merck once more drops down from the heavens just to become more ult charge for UTD. And that is first point for UTD. But second point has already proved to be a behemoth, and Boise State is fully reset and ready to handle.
They're fully reset, but again, we have to look at that ultimate economy. Both Petal and Cash are holding on to their ultimates. Derpy about to have another shatter here from what was just used earlier. They're looking really, really good, so Boise State now has to just be extremely cognizant of how they play this corner and also manage that window, which you can see the flank. There is a divide, though. The wall comes out, so you need to see Plato break it quickly. Artillery lands quite heavily on top of Matt Merck, understanding that you need to pivot the shield upward. They're locked into the Blizzard, so they've at least gotten rid of that ultimate.
We do see that with that, the flank did not end up paying up for Boise State, but they should get one more team fight before going in. And they got the big Blizzard out, and they got the big DPS ultimates out. So now Boise State is now at the ultimate advantage. If we could get the Blizzard for clear, that would be huge. And if we didn't have the second point, minute and 31 seconds.
This is going to be very, very challenging with these last two fights. The shatter comes out, but there is a barrier managing to survive. Vagel gives enough, but we have to look at what was just contributed into that. Again, you have 3 ultimates being thrown into this from Boise State. They again have to now solely rely on Chosen with this amplification matrix to deny this last 60 seconds, which could look to be last fight as long as UTD takes enough time to get here.
And UTD is not looking too good ultimate economy either. They just have the answering window. So I think in terms of ultimates, the better window wins. And if the fight goes on for too long, Plato will have an airstrike to contribute to the fight. And airstrike is one of those ultimates that can contribute even from small.
The tensions grow high. You can see there is full awareness of how UTD is going to press into this. The amplification matrix, as you said, is the win condition, but Plato is nearing this ultimate. The artillery will be extremely valuable. There is a great separation. Bagel gets the takedown. That's going to lead into this, and that should be the end for UTD.
We're thinking that's got to make sure we don't C9. Got to make sure Boise State's going to take Shambali Monastery pretty clean. We got to hit this Bastion, and it looks like Clear's just kind of waiting for the shot on them. They switched the ball, so they maybe are going to get a touch here as Kiriko's just waiting for the ball to engage so that she can then teleport and touch. Boise State 5 seconds and dwindling for Shambali Monastery.
Yep, the desperate play comes in. Derpy looks for the overtime, manages to claim it, but they chase them down. Derpy is eliminated. The artillery shells are finally unleashed by Plato as the overtime will not last long. You can see that there is hyper-focus from Boise State, a very risky and challenging outcome ahead of them. It got a little dicey, but UTD unfortunately is not able to outmatch Boise State this time around, and the defense shall hold.
And Boise State had the map advantage on Shambali. We knew that that was something that they were comfortable with, and we also knew that third point was probably not going to be played. There are very few completions all the way to Shambali Monastery, so Boise State making it all the way to second point proved to be a mountain that UTD could not overcome, but now they have the benefit of going to where they're strong.
Yeah, beautifully done. Got a little scary. You could, I mean, even from that one camera moment where we had a lot of intensity in the comms, to say the least, as you do have Boise State able to take this 2-1, a lot closer than I think some would have said previously. But again, a competitor against Boise State nonetheless.
And once again, amazing job on UTD for adapting to King's Row. Things weren't looking too good, but then they got the second opportunity and they absolutely seized it. But it was not enough, and Boise State's going to take that 2-1. And Boise State, I definitely have to say, there was a little bit of a breakdown in the Boise State strat, but they were able to come back, come together as a team, and resynchronize, which I think is not a thing that a lot of teams can do. I think most teams, when you hit that point of kind of breaking apart, not a lot of teams are able to really pull it back together.
And again, it's just allowing yourself not to be rattled by those types of things. Again, you come back with a full map reset, then you find yourself going down by a map and then looking to try and recover on a map that does look to tend into your favor since it is your map selection. And it was really, really close throughout Shambali Monastery. So it's one of those ones where you feel very, very strong and very confident that you took it. But it's one of those things where you want to make sure that moving forward, you can continue to refine yourself and play more effectively so that you don't find yourself in a pinch like that was.
And are there any particular players that you'd like to nominate for player of the game?
I mean, nominating player of the game, it's an interesting one. I would either say Clear or potentially Matt Merck, because there were a couple just really key components to the way that they were looking in for a lot of the dive and flanking aspect of it, especially for Shambali Monastery, but also just their overall frontline aggression when it came to needing to play adaptively to something else.
And it looks like it might be Matt Merck, and Matt Merck is going to be our player of the game. And Matt Merck, rightfully so, they're the spearhead that kind of lets the rest of Boise State do what they need to do. I will also say, as we're highlighting Matt Merck, gotta thank Chosen and Bagel for being your mobility, for being your sustain. And the ICCU player of the game is brought to you by Idaho Central Credit Union, who believes a great player makes a team more successful, just like Idaho Central's helping members achieve financial success. Matt Merck is the Idaho Central Credit Union player of the game, not for the first time and definitely not for the last time either, as we see a fire strike land onto Petal and then just the nano run on point, absolutely untouchable.
Yeah, and we can see some of these plays towards the tail end of this as well. Again, just really understanding how to enter in onto this. And even though there were a couple of shatters that were denied, there were still many that were extremely dominant from Matt Merck, knowing how to also bypass pressure forward and taking space. That's the biggest thing is Matt Merck is able to take so much space and value because what is being given to them. And because that space is gained, you really don't know how to counteract against it. I mean, UTD had so many problems to negate that. They just weren't able to really deny them the space that was constantly provided.
And with that, do you have any final thoughts before we go into our top 5?
I'm just looking forward to seeing more collegiate. We're getting closer and closer to those groups and playoff phases. And in this next month, it's going to be a thrill, especially with what we have developed for Pro-Am and how they're going to now also, because we did qualifiers, but now we're going to enter into actual Pro-Am where we do have contenders team face off against OWL teams and then really start to solidify what is going to be the best thing that these collegiate teams can start thriving and taking off of and bringing to their own gameplay.
And once again, amazing reset for Boise State there. You won first map, there was a little bit of a hiccup with second map, and then you were able to bring it back together for third map. So thanks for winning, and your reward is better seating in the next part of your journey. And with that, we have our top 5 plays, which are presented by the Idaho Army National Guard, who invites you to take your impressive critical thinking skills into real time. With more than 10 jobs offering a $20,000 bonus and your degree of choice paid for, the Idaho Army National Guard is the best team out there. Reach out to them on Twitch at iGuard Gaming. And from all of us here at Boise State, thank you for an exceptional night of Overwatch, and thank you to all of the players as they leave the arena. It's always better to cast games when you guys are winning and excited. And once again, I'm your host, Colby Alloway, signing out, and thanks, Rich Rad, for joining us.
So sweet that they left me blind. Making promises we just can't keep, and it felt so right. Screws tried to lure me right into an affidavit for your mommy as I'm falling and I'm out of time. I'm caught up in your tongue, they say. You claim that you love me, but it's just another play. I'm stuck inside your room all day. You say it's for my safety, but I'm just one of your prey. She's got a gun and a bag and she's waiting for you. She has a
She's got a gun and a bag and she's waiting for you.